Check the clock. It's a 4 o'clock start to Green Rush Live on a Friday afternoon. Hi, everybody. I'm Jimmy Young, the founder of Pro Cannabis Media. We've been here at this time slot for almost 3 years. That's right. This is probably the longest continuing live show that we've produced at Pro Cannabis Media. We're very proud to talk about the business of cannabis on this program. I have a very interesting show ahead of us, but first I want to bring in my guest host, Rick Thompson, who of course is a correspondent on our Weed Talk News show and the executive director of Normal for Michigan. Hello, Rick.
Hello, Jimmy. I'm always happy to be on this show. It's a great time on Friday.
And we are welcoming in a great guest, again, courtesy of our friends at the Morrison Agency out of California. He is only about 3,000 miles away from me with a pit stop at what, 1,500 to you, Rick, or 1,800 from Michigan to California?
I hate to think about it. It's a long way.
We'll call it.
You know one thing, you and I had to scrape ice this week, and I actually found out George Sadler is with us. His company is called Gelato. And George, you actually admitted that in Southern California, you can't find an ice scraper, can you?
You know what? I didn't have time to go look for one, but I highly doubt that you're going to find one, at least down here. And you were talking about not wanting to put your swear words out there. So I left mine as well, but I wanted to make sure that you understood that I felt your pain, believe it or not. In Southern California, a few days ago, I had to scrape ice, and I used one of my kids' toys to do it.
There is nobody that's going to be sympathetic to your cause from the Northeast. I just want to say, okay.
Well, if it makes you feel any better, I'm going snowboarding next week.
There you go. You know what? As long as you are making the most of it, we all know about that Southern California scene. But first of all, tell us a little bit about your company, Gelato. And the best thing that I was impressed when I read about your bio is this is a family-run business, correct?
Yeah. And so anybody that does know, we used to own a company called Platinum Vape, and we sold that 2 years ago, roughly. And so we started Gelato, and we are a family-based. My son is my business partner for the last 14 years. And then my other son, Nathan, which is now a business partner with one of our stores, is also functioning within this company as well. And my daughter, Maddie, is as well heading up the part of the sales part of what we're doing.
Well, that's awesome, and I know the challenges of the family business because I'm a descendant of one,
Okay.
and turned it down when Dad called me in 1988 and offered it to me, and I said, "Look, I'm a sportscaster. I'm not going to be an office furniture salesperson." And I look back at that conversation almost on a daily basis now, because we all know it's a challenge to run a business and build that business, right?
Yeah, it's funny because I've always kind of done my own thing, and my father, which owned an electrical company for almost 40 years, he was kind of on the step side of that. And just fast forwarding, I was living in Michigan with my family. I got divorced and kind of took some time and came out here. My dad said, "Hey, at that point in time, I owned some drive-through coffees and a restaurant in Michigan." And my dad said, "Hey, why don't you come out here and just kind of spend some time here?" And he kind of swindled me into the business side of which I'd kind of off and on been a part of a little bit growing up with him. And then all of a sudden I found myself as the vice president of the company, which I have no idea how I ended up in that situation. And my dad's over in France and he's doing his thing. And I was the most miserable I've ever been. Even outside of the divorce, I was so miserable. And then I realized that, he really wasn't wanting to be a part of it. And so when he came back into town off and on, I'd kind of express it to him. Then finally I'd said, you have no interest. Let's just sell this thing. Cause it's not for me. And, somewhere secretly, I think just like every father, he thought, oh, maybe my kid will take this over and run this, down to Legacy Town or something. And I had no intentions at all. And so, we sold it. And that's kind of how that whole thing had sparked back in the day with Platinum Vape. Was my son, Cody, which was in college at the time, was in a business class, and somebody had done a business model on growing cannabis. And he came into my office, and we probably had about a month left before we were fully sold out of that business after 40 years. And he said, "Hey, you ever thought about growing cannabis?" And I said, "No, it's never been anything, business wise." And he persisted. And so anyways, we took after we closed that up, I kind of sat back for a bit, and he was, continued to look at it, and we ended up both getting our caregiver's license and that stuff that was going on, and started the first company, and six plants in a garage. Had no idea what to do, how to grow anything. Miraculously, it turned out, and it kind of bloomed from there. And no pun intended, but we went from there to deliveries to stores, and we turned six plants into about $140 million a year business between California, Arizona, and Oklahoma, and Michigan, of course, which was our biggest market.
And it says you're in 400 dispensaries between California and Michigan. And Rick obviously is from Michigan. And Rick, I know that the market in Michigan always seems to be in a state of flux. I'm sure you have a few questions you'd like to ask George. Go ahead.
Well, George, first of all, I've already met your rep here in Michigan. I have her card here, Skylar Peggy. She's fantastic.
Great.
Yep. So we've been into some different industry events together. But Michigan is still a $2.3 billion industry. And although it's maybe challenging for some of the people, I mean, really, it's when you can differentiate yourself from everybody else, you do still stand a chance to gain valuable shelf space and really command some market share. One of the things I was curious about, Gelato is the name of a strain. I mean, clearly Gelato has fostered a lot of different strains throughout the cannabis verse. How do you balance the whole identity issue between trying to establish that Gelato as a company name versus someone else who might be selling a strain that has the name Gelato in it and it not have anything to do with you?
Well, I mean, it is kind of funny that we ended up with that name, and my son, I'd like to take credit for it, but he's the one that came up with Gelato. And I don't think it was truly based off the strain. I have to pick his brain on how that came to be. There's a big story beyond that. But how crazy is it that we were able to trademark, obviously not federally, but we were able to trademark Gelato, and then extensively trademark past that with logos and everything else, which we never thought that it wasn't already taken. And so the biggest confusion that we have, which we've kind of ridden with, is Gelato, the ice cream gelato. That seems to be where there's a lot of confusion on what we are, or especially in the beginning, people thought we were like a medicated ice cream. And obviously we've walked past that. But as far as the strain goes, that's always been a mainstream strain. And so we ended up with the name, and we've carried it through there. And so our motif is that look. I mean, we do have like some decorations of ice cream carts and that type of thing. But no, I mean, we've been really fortunate to be able to trademark Gelato, which I never.
The marketing's fun on that. There's a lot of ways you can brand identify, working off that whole confection and cannabis connection there.
Yeah.
Now, you're in Southern California, and Rick and I do a regular news show every week, and we know what's going on in California with the different rule changes and what have you. You've got a company that manufactures your concentrates, your edibles, your pre-rolls, your flour. It's all there, and you're doing, supposedly, according to your release anyway, you're one of the fastest growing cannabis companies in California. What's your secret, George? My
secret? Why would I give that out on this show?
Because that's why we ask those kind of questions. By the way, you can BS as much as you want. We're going to believe anything you say.
That's all I can do, I guess, is BS, because I just did a podcast last week, and it was kind of the same question. I said, I don't really know. I'll be honest with you. I think we have retained relationships, and the way that we are able to maneuver through all this, we really have gotten to the point of understanding the store's needs. That's the most important to us, is how do we work together with the store to make the store profitable? We can only do so much, obviously, but we really pair up with these stores. And I think we're in I don't know, it's 430 or 440 stores in California alone. And our, I don't know how you say it, but per store is about 130% higher than any other companies that are on a shelf in a store. And so to us, that our relationship driven company and the salespeople and everybody that's a part of this team has done a really good job of making sure that we pay attention to what's happening at the store level, and not just with the buyers, but more so with the bud tenders and the people that are really touching our product, and that translates into the customers. So I'd love to be able to sit back and say, this is what we're doing, but I can't tell you. I really don't know.
Well, and it says I shouldn't be asking you that anyway, because you have no secret code. But it seems to me if you're working with your family, you've already had some relationships in place. Now you're in the atmosphere, I'm going to guess, in your company is a very positive, family-oriented kind of relationships, right?
Yeah. Yes, absolutely.
Does that lend itself to some conflict sometimes?
I'll be honest with you. The conflict that if you're talking about the old conflict between the family members, my son and I have not had an argument, and I mean an argument or a disagreement, business or personal, in probably, if I were to take a guess, 7-8 years.
Wow.
Yeah. And my other son, Nathan, which he's part owner in our Gelato store up in Lake Elsinore. I don't know that we have ever had a disagreement. I mean, we have disagreements, but I mean, there's just no arguments. We've really grown to appreciate each other. And that started way back in the day. Now, don't get me wrong. My son, Cody, and I, when we first started, we had a lot of disagreements. And what we did was we really found to stay in each other's lane and stay out of each other's lane and stay in our own lanes. And we were able to work that way early on to understand, what each one of us was going to do. And I said, listen, I've been running business my whole life, and I don't want to deal with the money anymore. I don't want to deal with that side of it. So you take that, I'll take the infrastructure, I'll take, and we combine each other on the marketing and the ideas and the concepts. And he's amazing when it comes to the marketing side of this, and the branding that we're doing is, we have now, I think, 170 SKUs. He's just done an amazing job with that. And it's kind of nice too, because to see my other son and daughter starting to become a part of that is pretty cool. And we are getting ready to launch, believe it or not, I mean, non-cannabis related, but we are launching a tequila. And so we are, as a family, plus, I mean, everybody here is a family. We're all flying down to Jalisco and doing the whole agave thing. And it's really kind of cool to see my other son and daughter, being a part of something like this for us, that's new, and we're all doing this together. So super excited about that.
I love it. Hey, Rick, you know how everybody in this industry has an edible story. You also, looking back, have a tequila story. I don't know about you, but I know I do.
Everybody that reached my age certainly does. I know.
It's funny because one of my security guards downstairs says, hey, he's from Mexico, and he caught me on the way in. He said, hey, your son Nathan, I told him that I'd get him a bottle, and but he hasn't been in today. He's up at the store. I said, okay, I'll take it. So he runs down, he grabs me this bottle, and he's got it in a brown bag, and he said, okay, now listen, what they told me at the store was, if you drink all this, you're going to find your pants down at your knees. I said, I think any alcohol you drink this much, you're going to find your pants at your knees.
If you could feel your knees, that's actually a good sign. Hey, George, as I'm reading your bio and your background, one of the things that really stuck out to me was your opinion about institutional investing, because in the cannabis space, everybody's looking for capital. They're willing to give up equity. They want debt financing, whatever it takes. You have a little bit different approach, don't you?
Yeah, I mean, I think it just kind of naturally came in play for us because we didn't come from money, and So when we, we bootstrap this thing, like I said, in six plants in our garage, $24,000 worth of equipment for two, father and son that had no idea what they were growing, and we YouTubed everything. We didn't understand the financing process, especially for cannabis, and that there was money out there. And we just naturally started, we continued to just put the money back into this company at that time. And our thing was, and I told my son, I always want to be debt free. And so back in the day, the big thing is, people fronting you marijuana and whatnot. And when we got into our first store, we had that available to us, but I was very diligent about saying, look, you don't want to owe these people money. When they come in, let's pay for everything. And it just, thankfully it stuck and it compounded as we went along. And, $5 turns into 50, turns into 5,000, turns into 500,000. It's not that easy, but I'm just, explaining the fact that we lived within our means and we did business within our means. And I was very adamant to my son that, yes, I know we all want to be driving Ferraris and Lamborghinis, and that time will come down the road. But right now, that's not the case. And so we really enjoyed the business as we were growing it. And it wasn't rapid by all means. I mean, we're talking, 13 going on 14 years now. And it took us about 7 to 8 years to get to the point where we were doing 80 to 100 million. But, keep in mind, we invested everything back into the business. We weren't living beyond our means, and the business was the biggest point of what we would put the money to be in front of us. And our employees, the same thing, adamantly making sure that everybody was taken care of. And so now what you see over the past years, and I always go back to MedMen, and those guys were great, back in the day, and being rated as the Apple of cannabis and the first $1 billion, retail store and whatnot. And my son was just like, wow, like, look at this. And I said, yeah, look at it, but understand it's a lot of paper involved. And yes, there's a lot of money that's going out, but what's really being done to secure that investment is where you're going to see down the road. And of course, 4 or 5 years later, we see that tide kind of come back in, and now, a lot of issues. And that's what we're seeing now, is we're just seeing there's such a rush for people to become like these big icons in this industry, when really you have the time. I mean, we're in the infant stage still of this business, and don't rush it. Don't, if you're going to take investments, I understand, take the lowest security investments that you can. And typically that's friends, family, and whatnot, because they're going to hold you more accountable than, being a public company and just taking, unknown money. And I've watched companies, and I've watched companies secure $75-100 million. And these guys are flying around in jets, and all of a sudden you start to see a decline, and they can't weather through that. And there's companies that just recently have pulled out of a few states, and California, Colorado, and I think Oregon was one of the companies. And I don't understand, for a company of that size, to pull out of these markets, which are huge markets. And then here we are, as a company that's 10 months now back into this. And, the numbers that we're doing are just absolutely amazing. And they're bigger than the numbers we were doing previously. But, we're very concentrated on slow growth. And, I think the problem that you see now is there's so many people coming into this industry, or in the industry, that for some reason they think like the wheels are on fire behind you. So you just got to move as quick as you can and get some money and get out. And we got a long time in this. Like, I'm looking through, my kids' years and their kids' years. And, we want this to be something long-term, and we have that. It's just the investment side of it now. You're just seeing so many people taking this money, and they don't know what to do. What are you going to do with $40-50 million?
Spend it. It's easy to spend money. It's easy to spend money. It's just not easy to make it, right? Or
exactly.
Right? But you figured that out, and I give you a lot of credit. So I want to give you an opportunity to plug your website here. And are any plans coming to the East by any chance?
Yes, and that's in the works right now, and we're once again, I mean, we're kind of a slow developer. We do have something that's under contract right now. I can't fully disclose that, but we are heading out there. I'll be on I think my son and I will be on a flight out there in the next month or so, and I think the contract is, if I were to ask our attorney, I think it's done. Of course, we're in Michigan, and a couple other places that we're kind of tiptoeing through the waters of licensing agreements, and we don't want to get too carried away on it, but we do have people that want to license it. So yes, so the answer is yes, we are working that direction.
Yeah. And that is, as far as I'm concerned, when you have product like that and you license out the recipes, if you will, that's interstate commerce, as far as I can tell. That being said, we know that you can't cross state lines with the flower, but you can grow the same cultivars in each state and then create these recipes. Isn't that what? Yeah. Yeah. Which,
and that's the hardest thing to do, to be honest with you. If it was, how great it would be to have interstate commerce, and right. Then we could ultimately be in 15 states in 2-3 years, but you have to take the juju has to go with it, and so we're very adamant that we are a part of that, and in maintaining the family, if you want to call it that, like this atmosphere that we have, and that's generated in through Michigan already as it is. We want to make sure that that's maintained in this brand, and that's why we did this, was to bring a kind of a fun light to cannabis, and allow people to be a part of something that it's not just for males, it's not just for females, it's everybody can take part in this.
Absolutely. And the company website is gelatocannaco.com, right? And they can find out more about George Sadler there, and check out his gelato goods and all the different lines that he is out there moving into different states. So next time you go to a dispensary, don't be afraid to ask, when's the gelato line coming to Massachusetts, to Maine, to Michigan? Well, Michigan, you're already there. So, but that's what you want. And of course, that New York market is opening up too, which is going to be fascinating to see if they can actually get rid of the 1,100 legacy growers and storefronts in Manhattan. Okay. Which is just crazy to me, but
it is. I was there not too long ago, and I had my wife and kids, and, we were walking down and enjoying the New York, and I looked to my right, and there's a van sitting there, and I realized they're selling weed out of that van, and it's just parked right on the side of the street. And I went over, I said, are you CBD? No, we're everything. What do you need? What do you want? I was like, so you're selling everything? Yeah. And then she kind of opened up one of the sides, said, yeah, we've got everything you think of, edibles, pre-rolls, and this and that. I said, are you licensed? And she said, well, I mean, what's the definition of licensed? I said, okay. And then I walked down as we went. We were there for probably 4 days, 3 or 4 days, I can't remember. And they're on every corner.
Yeah.
And I said, wow, like, I mean, we couldn't get away with that. I mean, although we're sitting on about 1,600, illegal dispensaries in the state of California, nothing compares to that. But I'm excited to see how this flows through New York, because as everybody knows, if New York and California are on the same level, a lot of things happen in between. And I think federally, it could push things a lot quicker, and it's proven to be. New York and California need to level up for these things to go through. So I'm super happy to see that go. And, we're anxious to be able to help in any way that we can, to be a part of that for sure. But they got a little work to do.
Yeah, you think law enforcement doesn't want to deal with
Nope.
It's an absolute mess. I love the story. We had it last week in We Talk News that there's actually an illegal dispensary 400 feet across the street from New York City Hall, where the mayor works. And
is there really?
And it's just, yeah. Oh God, yes. You can check it out on last week's We Talk News or the week before. And that's what it's like. But George, thank you so much for coming on, joining us. Appreciate it. Please let us know if you are coming east, or certainly when you go back to your Michigan roots.
Yeah.
You could always, I'm sure Rick will be happy to hang out with you.
As much as you might not want to think so, I'm excited about getting out of California, off and on.
Well, it is a different planet, okay?
That's true.
It's a different planet, and we totally get it. We got to take a break, and of course, it's a little bit after the 4:20 hour. We usually play the Jonathan Edwards song "Shanty" at that time. I'm sure we're going to hear it. When we come back, we're going to have what we call Freeform Friday. All right, that's what's happening over the next few 90 minutes of the show.
How provocative. Wow.
Yeah, I know. I stole it from the sports radio station in town. All right, we're going to be back after this. Don't go away. Green Rush Live continues after this.
Yeah, this is a tune that I wrote back in 19... I've forgotten. We had a saying in our old band, one of my first bands in 1966 or so. What are you gonna do tonight? Oh, just, like every other night, just gonna lay around the shanty and put a good buzz on. Gonna sit down in the kitchen, fix me something good to eat. Make my head a little high, make the whole day complete. Gonna lay around the shanty, oh mama, and put a good buzz on. Pass it to me, baby, pass it to me slow. We'll take time out to smile a little before you let her go. We're gonna lay around the shanty, oh mama, and put a good buzz on. You're on something. Go ahead. Rick Brodsky, everybody. Nothing to do and there's always room for more. Fill it, light it, shut up and close that door, baby. We're gonna lay around the shanty, mama, and put a good buzz on. Take it, okay. Prohibition never works, it's time to realize it. It grows in my backyard, it's time to legalize it. We're gonna lay around the shanty, mama, and put a good buzz on. I'm gonna sit down in my rented car. I'm gonna jam it into drive. Gonna head on out and play at WSCA with Sean. I'm glad I'm alive. We're gonna lay around the shanty, mama, and put a good buzz on. Every night and day, we're gonna lay around the shanty, mama, and put a good buzz on.
Nice. It's Friday. Thank God. Thank God Jonathan Edwards is joining us live in the WSCA studios.
You would think that it is. However, there's quite a bit of debate right now in the accounting industry when it relates to cannabis with this exact question. I'm part of a few different networking groups that are solely accountants for cannabis companies. And there's been quite a bit of back and forth in those communities and discussion regarding whether 280E, if it went away, if the administration legalized cannabis or took it off of Schedule 1, what would happen? And it could go either way right now. The debate is it can make the accountant's life much easier. That's what a lot of the inexperienced accountants are saying right now, it seems. Whereas the accountants that have been in this industry for a while and have gone through the same thing that happened with hemp a few years ago are saying that it actually will make lives more difficult, because when hemp became declassified a while back, the accounting became more complicated.
Bay State Cannabis Report is supported by Holyoke Cannabis, Holyoke's finest cannabis recreational experience. Hi, everybody. Welcome back to Green Rush Really Live here on Pro Cannabis Media on a Friday afternoon at 4 p.m. Eastern, which, do the math, 1 p.m. Pacific time. Okay. I'm Jimmy Young, the founder of Pro Cannabis Media. I've been here for too long. No, I've been here for 3 years. And joining me is our friend Rick Thompson from Michigan. And we want to bring in our friend who keeps his eye on cannabis stocks, Doug Miller from New Jersey. Hi, guys. Hey, Doug. Welcome back.
Hello, how you guys doing today?
Fantastic.
We're good. We're good. Hey, Rick Thompson, do you dabble in cannabis stocks? Have you at all?
I have in the past, but I've pretty much went to a cash only position because of the volatility in the market. Overall indexes are kind of struggling at some points, but there are some interesting green indexes that specifically index just cannabis stocks, and I'm fascinated by those. And I can't wait to hear what Doug has to say.
All right.
Yes. So, yeah, I look at the stocks every day. Obviously, I look at them, whether they're cannabis or not cannabis related. So I look at the every sector. So I break it all down. And yeah, cannabis sector is kind of a interesting sector because a lot of the stocks will go up if there's good news in the sector industry, not necessarily if a company posts good earnings. So more or less, like Apple has good earnings, their stock's going to skyrocket. That's not how it always works in the cannabis industry. It seems to be, hey, legalization happens in the state, they all go up, and then they all come back down. Of course, some of them will stand out and do better than others, and we can just go through a few. They were talking to that the last guest was actually talking about a company that stopped operating in 3 states. So let's go over their stock chart, because Curaleaf is an interesting company, and I have one. Literally, I could throw a rock at the one in New Jersey, so that's how close it is to my house. And very interesting company, just like he was explaining. It's amazing that you have these huge MSOs that are literally pulling out of giant markets. And I understand that it's a recession. Let's face it, we're in a recession now, I say, and I get you have to cut back and everything, but again, how does a giant MSO that literally pumps billions of dollars and has investor money? I mean, you're talking a huge company that trades on the stock exchanges, and they're just folding up shop, basically. I mean, they're pretty much saying that they don't have enough cash to operate. And if you look at the balance sheets and their real financials, they really don't have enough cash to operate. That's why they're shutting their doors in states. I mean, usually you close a couple operations down, they're literally closing states down. That's pretty big drastic jump. And so yeah, let's just go through. So yeah, their stock is not looking very good right now. Hexo, another big company, they recently did a reverse split, and that one's curling right up. So a lot of these cannabis stocks actually look good right now. Minus the Curaleaf. SNDL, another big one that grows. They their stock's kind of dipping down, but these are going to bounce off the bottom right now. Everything just went red today for the last 3 days, really. And I don't, they're everyone's afraid about inflation. That's the big thing today was inflation. I don't know why it's such a surprise that the inflation is worse than the experts expected. And I also say the experts are also saying we're heading for a recession. We've been in a recession since the end of August of 22, and we're heading straight for a depression, and it's going to be terrible. I publicly say this all the time, and I said it today. I said, be prepared and and do yourself a favor and get prepared and your family prepared, because the experts aren't going to tell you how bad it's going to be. They don't want mass panic. And so I just tell all my friends and family, just be prepared to see things that you're not used to seeing in this country for a good year and a half. But we'll go right back to the cannabis stocks real quick. Canopy Growth, CGC, setting up the bounce real nice. A couple of them are going to pull back. So if you do watch them and you day trade or trade fast, just watch it. It's pulling back and you'll catch that nice bounce. It'll definitely fly. You'll probably see a 50%, 100% run on some of these real quick. And Tilray, same thing, setting up perfect. TLRY, and Aurora Cannabis, ACB, same thing, setting up perfectly. All three of them pulling back a little bit right now, but they're going to pop. So that's what I see in the stock market.
All right. So it's like anything else. You buy low and sell high. Isn't that the idea? And right now, those cannabis stocks are pretty low, correct?
And that's exactly what I always look for. I look for the lowest of the low. I always say I look for the ones that are basically in the basement or coming off the bottom. And then, you expect a bounce. And usually they're not long-term investments, especially right now. As you mentioned, Rick, everything is so volatile, especially the cannabis stocks. But I mean, every stock. I generally hit about right now, 200% plus profit calls a week. About 2 years ago, it was almost 3 a day. So you can tell that the market's definitely shifted. It's not that, I'm not seeing them. They're few and far between now. And you really have to pay attention. And yeah, the cannabis stocks, they're just sputtering around, really. They're not really great trades. I mean, if you're in the cannabis stocks, like I said, the ones I mentioned are going to set up and run quick, but you want to be in and out of them right now. And that's almost everything.
Doug, one of the things that would absolutely make millionaires out of thousandaires right now would be if there was a move in the federal direction to remove 280E or to make the industry more profitable or to make some kind of federal regulation. I think it's reasonable to think that every cannabis stock that's publicly traded, Canadian or on American exchanges, is going to see a 100 to 300% jump. I mean, because of the expectation, the entire industry's been suppressed as it waits for this one particular cork to pop off the top of the bottle. Doug, am I wrong to think that that's 300 to 400% is a reasonable amount of growth that would happen in a very short time were there to be federal announcements?
Overnight, if they went federal banking, federal legalization, overnight, the industry would just soar, because then people would they would feel comfortable, and they wouldn't. I mean, let's face it, how does a company operate when you can't set up a grow facility in one state, your headquarters in another? I mean, just look at every big industry that operates. They find the cheapest land and places that are valuable to them and their company, and that's where they set up. Cannabis companies can't do that. They have to set up in that state and do everything by them regulations. They can't basically sell out of the state. So you're limited to whoever's in your state. And then you can't even use the federal bank. So I mean, every which way they just get screwed. It's a nightmare to be a business owner. It's almost set up to fail. I mean, almost set up to fail. Of course, you're
You-
going to have people that understand how to succeed in business, and they're going to figure it out. And as the gentleman said in the last, George said, he's looking at it as the long haul, and that's what you have to do. This is not a fast 1-2 year game. This is a 10-year game, and 1 to 2 years is just getting started. And
Right.
people think because it's in the cannabis industry, you're going to make millions overnight. They don't understand. They
Well,
just don't understand the regulations, the rules, the laws, and how business operates. But
right.
yeah, I
And,
agree 100%. They federally legalize it. Boom.
but they're not, you can't think about legalization for another 5 to 10 years. You just can't. It's just not going to happen. Now,
I agree with
280E, banking, those are the things, descheduling or rescheduling, whatever it is. Those are really what I think are the most reasonable changes in the federal laws to move forward, to get this industry forward. Rick, alone, if you took 280E out, the ability to write off regular business expenses, again,
Each one of those events that you just talked about, Jimmy, any one of those would result in a boom in the stock industry as
Right.
far as the cannabis indexes go. So, I mean, the industry is so hungry for any positive news. Doug, if I'm overstating this, you let me know. But the industry is so hungry for positive cannabis news that almost any blip on the radar federally or from even from a big state like New York sends a lot of these large MSO stocks really going crazy again. And that's where you talk about, you ride the bump, you get them at a decent price, news comes, you ride the rise, and then you get rid of it before it comes back down to the level that it was before the excitement happened. Am I wrong about that?
No, you're totally right. And that's kind of what I was saying. They basically go up as you can see a legalization in a state. They all just boom for it's not that they had good earnings or anything. They're just going up because there was good news in the industry. So yeah,
Rising
if they,
tide boys all ships, right? I mean,
that's
that's how it is.
and it's one of the few industries that actually operate that way. And I think it is because, there isn't the federal banking. There's not normal business rules that apply to this industry, but yet it still trades federally and all over the country on stock markets. It's so bizarre that
Great
you can
contradiction.
invest in a cannabis company goes through, I mean, I trade on E-Trade, so it goes through banks, right? They're cannabis companies. It can legally trade, but yet they cannot legally do business federally. Doesn't make much sense to me. But yeah, there's rules for everything. And what am I supposed to say? I just follow them and just trade stocks and look at the charts and see which ones are going to go up and try to get in it.
I got a question along the same line. What about the volume of trading in the cannabis industry? Has that gone up or down over the last year, 2 years?
Way down. I mean, you're talking at the height when the pandemic started, really, because you got to remember when the pandemic started, a lot of people they took professional sports off, so people were hungry to do something and gamble, and everyone's locked in their house, and then all of a sudden, Robinhood pops along. They figured out, oh, we'll market to these 21-year-old, 21 to 35. Boom, just get them in 18, and yeah, they just everybody was trading back then. And I mean, you had tons of, and everybody was also getting government funding at the same time. So it was just getting funneled money into, and that's basically what happened. The market got pumped. It was a fake pump because there was a lot of people involved that shouldn't have been involved that obviously learned a lesson. And, but yeah, there was a lot of money getting thrown into the market that usually doesn't get thrown in. And yeah, a lot of people were trading cannabis stocks back then. So it was meme stocks, cannabis stocks. So now, I mean, some of the volume on them, you don't see 100,000 shares getting traded in a day. It's crazy.
Yeah, I remember when cannabis became an essential business to stay open, except in Massachusetts. And it's true, Rick. I mean, they let the
We loved
medical.
it in Michigan. It really advanced the industry here. Sorry,
Of course,
that you guys
of course
missed
they
out,
did. The outgoing governor, who's now the president of the NCAA, I might add, okay, Charlie Baker, was not a big fan of the legalization of the plant in his home state of Massachusetts. And he did everything he possibly could to retard the growth, the start of cannabis in Massachusetts. And I think that is the MO of a lot of these states, especially early on in the infancy and the development of this industry. So again, it is what it is. I think we've got, we're now going to go back out to the West Coast, and we're going to get in here with Josh Kincaid, who joins us. Hello, Josh.
Hey, Jimmy.
And I think you know Doug and Rick, actually, at this point, right?
I've heard of them.
Yeah. Tell us what's going on in Washington State. I think I read something or heard something in the news that didn't go over very well. The legislature is trying to do something that a lot of people aren't really happy with.
Well, it's Friday, Jimmy, so that makes sense. There's blue skies, so there's something wrong in the city, I guess, today. Or if there's something right. There's always something going on. I can tell you that if you're running around waiting for legislature to cap the THC at 10% or change the packaging so that the colors and shapes aren't attractive to children, then you're never going to get anything done. And so that's an issue that a lot of people have to have, is how do you balance that out? Because I can tell you it can weigh on you and affect your final product. I was a judge for a cannabis cup, the first annual cup for this large publication here in Washington State. One of 3 flower judges. I had to sample 155 within 3 weeks. And it was a lot, but it also really kind of gave me an understanding and opened my eyes to the fact that there's a lot of average weed out there, a lot of average. And so, you got to look at the really at the bottom of the barrel couldn't afford to join or enter the cup. And the top of the market probably already has that foundation. They don't need it. So you have this massive majority, at least 80% jockeying for position within Washington, trying to get more sales. Super competitive, probably the most competitive place in all of North America. 1,700 products when you go into a store, all on the wall. So it's incredibly in your face, and just, you don't really know what to do. It's not a tablet, it's not neat, clean. But the majority of those products I found out through a development of a smoker's cough over the last 3 weeks, that they're really not worth smoking. A lot of these are not worth smoking. So Washington, I think, is going to be a bellwether, a harbinger for the industry. I think as we move forward, I said that around 85% of companies might fail. Statistically, 1 in 5 probably do. I'm bumping that up to 97.5%, Jimmy, of cannabis companies that are going to fail because they don't know what they're doing. And, we talk about legislation and money and restrictions and things holding each other back, but it's jockeying for profit and money that's going to be their own demise. So I'm seeing that in Washington, Jimmy. That's what's happening.
Yeah, there you go. And can we talk about limiting the THC content in the flower for a second here? I visited, I think, 5 or 6 dispensaries today. In fact, I was supposed to show one of the swag things, whatever. The THC content continues to be the buying thing for consumers when they go into dispensaries. And yet every grower I talk to, everybody who understands how the plant works with the human body all says the same thing. It doesn't matter how much THC percent is in a plant. It is about the terpenes that are interacting with it that dictate the intensity of the intoxication or the high, if you will. And I wonder how that is ever going to change, or more importantly, how do we enlighten the elected officials with that little tidbit? Because that's a really important tidbit.
I think when you have, as strains kind of shift, if you look at Blue Dream, for example, and a lot of these profiles that have shifted away, it gets people to sort of understand that when they realize that there's a different experience and a different grower. So props to Nevada for primarily shopping by terpenes. That's, yes, a lot of people still shop by price and percentage, highest THC at the lowest price point, but there's still a ton of people who go there are able to filter by terpenes. So yes, that's the effect that you're looking for. Right. And so that's what people should be looking at when they're going to Leafly or any other site trying to look up a strain and its effects. That's what they should be looking for is, does this have the desired effects? Like, I look at the profile of Blue Dream circa 2015, and I want that alpha pinene and beta pinene and beta caryophyllene and all of those together make what Blue Dream used to be, not what it is now. And so I think as long as people understand that it's morphing and shifting, that'll get them to look at it on their own. But when they're just, looking, especially at a time right now when the economy sucks, people are just looking at whatever they can afford. Washington doesn't even have the ability to look at terpenes. So I think there needs to be bud tenders that really drive that and push that education. And that's going to be on their own until we can. I'm trying to get even some sites that at stores to even be able to filter by terpenes. I think that should be a no-brainer.
A number of years ago, I interviewed Dr. Lester Grinspoon as part of the Planet Green Trees program from Harvard University. And Lester Grinspoon said, instead of calling it the entourage effect, what we should be calling it is the ensemble effect. Because instead of an entourage, in which case THC is a leader and all the other cannabinoids follow as secondary, in an ensemble, everyone participates at an equal level. And I think that's what we're really discovering about the cannabis plant. But yet still THC is the primary driver of the common man's understanding about what they falsely consider to be potency of cannabis. And it may take generations for us to be able to wean the customer base off that, because once you've been taught something like that, very difficult to unlearn that.
Yeah. Does anybody go into a liquor store and look at the percentage of alcohol in the various liquor, 86 proof, 90 proof, 110, whatever it is? Is that a similar factoid, if you will, for a buying decision? People go into a liquor store looking for the most intense alcohol experience they can have, and they go into a cannabis dispensary and they're looking for the most intense cannabis experience they have. What do you think?
Well, but think about this though. With alcohol, it's a very predictable response based on the percentage. But with THC, it's so much based on what, like Josh mentioned, it's so much based on the additional chemicals that come along with it. I mean, if you want straight up THC, you can get Marinol, right? And there's nothing else added to it. It's just THC. And for that experience, it certainly doesn't replicate the whole plant experience that we have when we consume it, either in an edible format or in a smoked format. It is really the synergistic action of these cannabinoids altogether. And thank goodness for some of the researchers in Israel who are discovering some novel cannabinoids that we can use to potentially enhance our THC experience, or perhaps discover additional medicinal benefits from the cannabis plant. And all hail Rick Simpson, who, I mean, in the discovery of his cannabis oil in Canada, not only made himself an outlaw, it's not allowed back in his own home country, but also helped save millions and millions of lives from sharing the information about how he formulated that and how it was created. I know Doug's nodding his head. You know what I'm talking about, Doug.
Yeah, Rick Simpson oil is amazing. I actually make oils as well and do a bunch of extractions. I make an oil that helps prevent seizures, and it's worked for over 100 people. So it's amazing. And but I always explain it this way too. Every person's body's different, and as you mentioned, the terpenes, I always say the THC, sativa, indica, none of that means anything to anybody. And it's funny, Josh, Blue Dream was always my favorite strain, and I just grabbed some, and it's so different now than what it was 4 or 5 years ago. But let me go ahead and just say I explain to everybody that every person's body is different, and every day is a different day. I mean, the way the moon sets actually affects your body, and what you ate affects your body, and how much water you took affects your body. And I explain it this way: everybody's had the effect where they drank one beer and felt it, and then you drink 6 beers one night and you don't feel a thing. It depends on what you ate that day, and a lot of things go into play. Well, cannabis works the same way, and every person's body is different. That's why pharmaceutical medicine doesn't necessarily work for everybody. It's based on about 1 in 1,000 people that it'll really work great on. Everybody else, it'll kind of work, and then you'll see negative effects to a lot of people. That's why they have to put these long things of, it could do this, this, and this, because it's just not made for everybody to take. And it's just like they throw a dart at a dartboard and they're like, hey, maybe it'll work for you. I don't know. But cannabis, you can actually play with your dosage and figure out what strain is best for the person. And I always say, you know, sometimes it's an experiment, but you can experiment with cannabis without it being dangerous. You try a little bit and you can immediately tell the effects if it's the right strain for you. There's definitely strains. I always had bad allergies, and I smoked almost since I was 15, and I always said the immediate first time I smoked it, I was like, wow, this is like the only thing that's ever helped my allergies. And yeah, and now as I gotten more knowledgeable about the strains and, you know, different things, I know the ones that my body it works best with, and you can literally pinpoint it. And that's what I help people try to do. And I also help medical professionals try to, you know, properly give out medicinal advice to their patients, because it's important. I mean, you get older people and they have no idea what they're doing. They don't even know how to smoke or do anything with it. They don't know how much or what. And a lot of them want to try to cook with it, which is I was a chef, so I've been cooking. I was making brownies back in 2000, so I've been making edibles for a really long time, and I can break it all down. But yeah, it's a whole different chemistry with cooking, depending on if you're going to use chocolate or different fats and this. And people just don't understand the chemistry side of it, and they just start throwing stuff in, and it's a totally different body effect. And then if they don't feel it right away, then they want to eat more, and it's a double effect. And you try to explain this thing to this kind of things to people, and it's just like they look at you like you're crazy. So I always just tell everybody, start very small. If you don't feel it that day, wait till the next day and try a little bit more than the first day, and just work your way up, and you'll figure out the best dosage for you, and then we'll figure out the best strands for you. And
It's start low and go slow. It's been a mantra of the nursing community, the medical community. And what happens sometimes, and everybody can attest to this, is you have an uncomfortable experience with edibles the first time out, and you don't want to go back to them. And that is something that the industry has to do a better job on too. Well, we're going to take a break here at the top of the hour. And then when we come back, Freeform Friday. Say that 3 times fast, Freeform Friday. And we'll have more Green Rush Live after this. Don't go away. It's a whole new world of weed out there, isn't it? Everyone is learning new ways to titrate, ingest, consume, imbibe, and engage with this plant medicine we call cannabis. Hi, I'm Jimmy Young, the founder of Pro Cannabis Media and the host of In the Weeds, and once in a while, the really live business cannabis talk show we call Green Rush on Friday afternoons from 4 p.m. to 6 p.m. Eastern. Now, let me tell you my cannabis story. You know, I've had 4 major surgeries in the past 23 years and suffer from osteoarthritis with a variety of metal parts in my body and one on deck. Now, thanks to those chronic pain issues, I've been a medical patient in Massachusetts for almost 10 years now. I remember my first trip to a dispensary just outside of Boston, and I told the bud tender I didn't want to smoke it anymore, so I tried edibles, then tinctures, then vaping, and now, if I'm going to smoke, I only use the Weegits filtration system. What? The Weegits.com, Weegits, that's weed, W-E-E-D, G-E-T-S.com, is where you'll find the planet's coolest product that cools the smoke from everyone's favorite flower. Now, the guy that started this was a pretty good medical device manufacturer, and he created this maze pipe that cools the smoking process from 1300 degrees Fahrenheit upon inflammation down to just 90 degrees when it reaches your mouth. That's right, 1300 down to 90. That's why this maze pipe is amazing. So here's how it works. You start with that glass bowl, you flame on, and then you inhale nice and smooth so the smoke goes through 3 different filtration and cooling systems. Now, if pre-rolls is your thing, you can use the Weegits filter that a pre-roll fits into perfectly. That's right, or even a chillum. The more filters, the smoother the draw. Best of all is the price. You can get all this, or one or the other, for just a few bucks. It'll cool your smoke and you'll give your lungs a break. Now, add in the code of PCM TV and you get 15% off. So just go to Weegits.com and check out the best way to enjoy a cooler smoke with less coughing and hacking and more peace of mind. All that resin and tar is collected in the polyurethane filters that are easy to clean with soap, water, and a few Q-tips. Your lungs will thank you, and so will I. The Summit Lounge in Worcester at 116 Water Street is Massachusetts' only private cannabis consumption social club. Hi, I'm Jimmy Young, Pro Cannabis Media founder. On March 1st, that's a Wednesday night, 7 to 9 p.m., we're going to be live streaming a program right from here, a talk show with all sorts of little media celebrities, sports celebrities. We've got an infused sampling of some food that we might be able to share here, as well as some other surprises. Cannabis trivia, Cannabis Jeopardy, and the best freaking milkshakes of all time. Check this out. Now at the Summit Lounge, a fireside, that's what they call it. It's a chocolate ice cream blended with milk and s'mores, Torani syrup, fluff rim. You had me at fluff. It's all coated in s'mores cereal, topped with freshly toasted marshmallows, a graham cracker, and a Hershey's milk chocolate bar. They'll be here. I'll be here. Will you be here? Take a picture of the QR code and get your tickets now. And welcome back to Green Rush Live for Friday afternoon here on Pro Cannabis Media. Just a reminder that coming up this week in Worcester, Massachusetts, which is the second largest city in New England. A lot of people don't know that, but it is. We will be going live from the Summit Lounge, which is the only legal cannabis social club in the state of Massachusetts. And so this is a place where you can go legally and consume cannabis inside with a lot of fans going, I just want to say. And we'll be there as well. We've got a very good lineup of guests. We've got some musicians that I know that are going to play some of the most favorite songs having to do with cannabis, including Shanty. In fact, this guy is going to help sing Shanty with Mark and Mark at this event live from the summit. So that'll be fun. And we want to thank Triton Technologies, who has come on now as our presenting sponsor. And they're an IT group that is doing great in this cannabis industry and actually taking over a lot of other people's attempts at creating the IT background, or the back end, if you will, of a lot of cannabis dispensaries and groups, MSOs, and that sort of thing. And we're really excited to have them on board, and they will be at that Summit Lounge with us at the very top of that show, 7 to 9 p.m. Eastern on Wednesday night, March 1st. Did I mention that I was Jimmy Young, the founder of Pro Cannabis Media? Did I mention that, guys? I don't know if I did. It's okay.
You did not.
I did. Okay. Hey, Doug Miller is here from Jersey, Rick Thompson from Michigan, and Josh Kincaid from Washington State. We've got cannabis talk going coast to coast here on Pro Cannabis Media for a Friday afternoon. And I do want to, I do think at this point, I'd love to throw this question out to the group here and see what kind of reaction we can get. If you had to pick only one thing can change in the cannabis industry at the federal level, what would that one thing be? Josh?
Oh, if I could change one thing at the federal level, I would have them remove Schedule 1.
Exactly. Good answer. Go ahead, Rick.
Oh, that was going to be me. Deschedule would be my number one. And of course, because that as an umbrella creates so many additional positive benefits. If you just deschedule it, then you don't need to fix the VA. You don't need to fix 280E. Once that's done, everything else sort of cascades into normality.
And Doug?
Yeah, I mean, they're absolutely right. I would just like to see the banking get situated so that the businesses can actually operate like a business and use banks. I mean,
Right.
It's it's detrimental to a business when you can't operate the way every other company in America can operate. It's
To be
not a
fair,
business
though,
model.
they have banks, like we've had banks on that are even publicly traded, and the feds are not going after them at all. But it is really, really expensive. So, like, whether you want to say it's fair or unfair, how expensive it is, it would be more fair, quote unquote, if they didn't have to pay such high fees. But I would say that interstate commerce would be the biggest game changer, because right now you're insulated. Like, you have all these people who are like, oh, my genetics are fire. Like, we're about to show some guys from Maryland, Massachusetts in the next segment, kind of duking it out. And yet I've heard that story, when they're talking about, I'm going to be, the best, whatever. You guys will hear it. And what you see in the West Coast is that people, when they talk about genetics and fire, it typically fails and doesn't work out, because you don't have really control over that. Things fluctuate, things change. But if you had interstate commerce, you could really start to force improvements. Because right now there's a lot of trash out there. There's a lot of really average, mediocre cannabis out there. And if states competed against other states, it would force the entire industry to be better and compete against themselves instead of deteriorating. And what I'm seeing right now is a massive deterioration from the inside. And you can't blame outside investors. It's the industry in and of itself deteriorating itself because of greed and profit, and they want to live longer. So if we can co-op, come together, and compete on a larger scale, I think that's really what could save the mom and pop cannabis industry long term.
Josh, I'll take the opposite opinion, though. I think that if you open up interstate commerce, you contribute to the McDonald'sization of cannabis. When you take a one cannabis company in California and you create a national demand from that one or two cultivation facilities, the ramp up of the number of plants almost always doesn't lead to good quality production. It almost always leads to that kind of crappiness that you see. I think don't forget too, remediation is a huge factor in some of this as well. When you have a large scale cultivation facility, and oftentimes they zap things with x-rays in order to kill all the microbacteria so that they can pass testing, or they expose it to ozone too, that deteriorates the terpenes that we just spoke so prized about just a few moments ago. So when we look at things on a national scale, if you're trying to ship cannabis from California to Massachusetts and you don't want it to get moldy along the way, you want to zap it with all kinds of radiation before it leaves your location so that there's no little buggies there to grow big while you do it in the transport. I think that really contributes to a lesser quality cannabis, as opposed to a small batch, locally grown mom and pop thing, where I believe that oftentimes those get stomped, as we see Walmarts come into town and kind of decimate local communities. The Walmarts of weed I'm referring to.
Yeah. I would also say, though, that the majority of the meat you get comes from Ohio or California. A lot of the vegetables you get comes from all over the place. So if we're looking at a large scale, that's really not what I was thinking about. But when you want lobster in Vegas, you're going to pay top shelf for that because it's shipped right away. And that's what I'm talking about. As soon as we can open up a cannabis cup nationally, that's when we can really start to see who's the best and why, and raise the bar. I guess that's what I'm trying to say, is we need to raise the bar, and interstate commerce would be the fastest, easiest, best way to get, genetics and transportation, drop shipping, beverage distribution. All these things could scale appropriately and affordably and raise consciousness and awareness of methods and failures, because you can learn a lot more from failures than trial and error. And so yeah, I think there's two ways of looking at that. I'm not talking about the Budweisers of the industries, because if you want to go and smoke that trash, go for it. But in order to raise that mom and pops to be the best that they can be, it's going to require a lot more competition. And the only way to have that is to literally be in your face competing against you.
And I honestly just think there's a lot of people, like we were saying earlier, there's a lot of people involved in this industry that really don't understand the industry. They got in because it was the cannabis industry. And yeah, you're going to learn along the way. but you're only going to learn so much. You need some of these boutique growers that were doing it 20 years ago. They learned everything on their own. They really know how to do these operations, and they don't want to work for MSOs. They just want to do small grows because they know it's easier, and it's attainable. And then the MSOs, I mean, they're huge corporations. You got a lot of money involved, so they make these huge grow operations, and you need a lot of manpower that has a lot of knowledge to run something like that. So that's where you come, Josh, to yeah, you have a lot of mediocre flower being grown because there's just not the right people tending to it or have the knowledge. And yeah, you can have great genetics get screwed up, and I don't even think these MSOs use the best genetics. I mean, they just use genetics that they get and they put their name on it, and then it just
Well, but the bean counters decide what they grow because they need to have the greatest yield per square foot in order to make sure that they maximize their canopy space in the cultivation facility. So instead of going to, Josh mentioned Blue Dream, one of my personal favorites, one of the most medicinal strains in our industry, but oftentimes not grown commercially because it's a sativa dominant, kind of a stringy plant that typically doesn't yield the same amount per square foot as some of the Kush varieties normally would.
Interesting. That's fascinating, guys. When you look, we all have heard this. There are people who know the cannabis world, and there are people who know the business world. It's the evolution of the cannabis business person that's happening through experiential learning, which is going on now. So in 5 years from now, I'm going to guess, or are we starting to see that from the West Coast to some of the states on the East Coast now? The knowledge, the products, that sort of thing coming to the East. I'm really interested to hear your reaction to that.
Well, honestly, I think a lot of the people that have been in the legacy market for a very long time, they have the knowledge. They've just been doing it forever. They've seen and if you've been able to do it for that long, 20 plus years, you've seen every single time that you've had to pivot. You've been through everything. I mean, I've always said if you can sell cannabis and do it as a side job or a job, you can run a business probably, and you're pretty smart with it because you're always up against something. There's always something happening, and you got to be smart about it. So people that have been doing it forever, yeah, they have a job. They just know the product and they know how to market it. They know what they're doing. They understand it. And now you have a lot of people that just want to get. I mean, Jimmy, all of us, we go to the conventions. You see how many people are new to the industry. They don't know anything about it, but yet they're willing to throw money into it. And and that's what happens. And
I keep waiting for that to come my way, just for the okay. I got the catcher's mitt ready to go. All right.
If you really want to see a good example of someone who's mastered that knowledge of cannabis plus business savvy, tune into the first half hour of this program for George Sadler, who created the Platinum Vape line and sold it 2 years ago and became, kind of wealthy. Platinum Vape is one of the largest, biggest selling vape lines in the United States of America. And he just told a story about starting with 6 plants in his garage. Okay. So that's the success story that we all aspire to. But as Doug mentioned, it's a rare combination when you can get someone who has cannabis industry knowledge and also has business savvy. It's a tough combo.
Right.
Yeah, and that's why our cannabis companies lasted so long. I mean, I've watched a ton of them come and go here and there, every which way, and we just pivot and just keep doing better and better. I mean, we're hitting a recession, depression, and it's like, yeah, it slows down a little bit, but it is what it is. We just figure out a new way to thrive. That's what you have to do, and that's having that business sense. And that's not just saying, oh yeah, I want to get into the cannabis industry, and oh yeah, it's going to make millions. So a lot of people have that idea that that's exactly what's going to happen overnight, and it's very far and few between. And the people that do make it and provide wealth or even have a nice career in it, they'll tell you how hard it is. I mean, it's the hardest industry. Again, you're up against laws and regulations every single day. So how do you compete with any other company? It's not like you're a concrete guy and you can just call up a concrete truck, they show up, everybody shows up, you can pay through the bank, it's a totally different world.
Yeah.
And
have you dealt with a few concrete companies in your
What's funny is there's concrete construction companies in the cannabis industry all over the place in every state, because they thought they could make more. So a lot of these carpetbaggers that are out there have no idea what they're doing, and they're part of that problem that I was talking about, where 85 to 97.5% is just trash. They're part of that. So all these carpetbaggers running out trying to get money have no idea what they're doing. They pushed out the legacy growers. They need to come back in order to save the market. I don't personally think that they're able to scale because they've never done it. They've never had to scale at large. So they're not going to be able to do it yet. But that doesn't matter because these microbreweries never had to scale. As long as you have your neighborhood homie or whatever, this legacy grower, that's all you need. Let them come back so that they can bring some legitimacy back to the market. Because, man, we need some better product out there. Like I'm going to go back to legacy because what I've been smoking for the last 2-3 years since my medical grower moved to Arizona has been a trashy experience. And after 155 products in 3 weeks from that cup here in Washington, I'm done trying. I'm trying to find something good. I'm going to go back to the legacy market.
Josh, we just talked in the break about how some of the national markets, individual states have year-over-year sales declines as opposed to increases. And I think none of us believe that people are smoking less cannabis. I think what they're doing is just changing the source, and they're going out of the regulated market and going into the unregulated market. And Josh, it certainly isn't for pricing purposes, right? Because pricing is rock bottom in most of these states. Wouldn't you agree?
$30 versus $160 for legacy, I'm willing to spend a lot more for better.
Yeah.
But you're getting a $30 bag of an ounce?
Yeah, it's called High Five Farms. It's my go-to. It's organic. It's outdoor. It's pesticide free. But being outdoor, like we heard, last week on the show, it's going to have mold on it. But it hits smooth and better than the dark, deep purples with the hairs and crystals, and it smokes way better than all of those. Trust me, I've smoked 155 of them, and I think there's an inverse relationship between how good it looks and how harsh it hits.
Yeah. Isn't it amazing, guys, that the whole movement was started, the legal movement with the idea was, let's legalize it, tax it, and we'll get rid of that legacy market. That didn't work out so well because they put so many restrictions and compliance issues on the legal market that it didn't allow the legal market to even get started. So
Jimmy, if anybody thought it was going to eliminate the unregulated marketplace, they were foolish, because remember, we had 80 years of the drug war where they tried to eliminate the unregulated market when there was no alternative. And all they ever did was make cannabis more accessible and less expensive. And now law enforcement has less incentive to go after the unregulated market, and there's less zeal amongst the populace for them to go and do that too. So they're even less likely to be able to eliminate. The best thing to do is to learn to coexist. These are two parallel markets. And remember, as one succeeds, the other is diminished, right? It's a scales game, and it's based on what you put on your side. And as Josh rightly pointed out, when you put better quality cannabis on one side, that tips the scale. Sure
and
does.
yet they said that there's a 20% legacy market out there right now. They were bragging about how, the regulated market is taken away from the legacy market and 80% came from there. And I'm like, where did you get your numbers from? I'm not really sure about that, because I'm pretty sure people are going to revert back. A lot of people I talked to at this cup in Washington don't go to the stores anymore, and they're so as this quality is kind of coming down, I think you're going to see a lot more people either demanding better stuff.
Guess which one of these two is the better quality cannabis? It's this one.
That one, yeah. I was going to say the one on the left.
I get. This is the regulated market cannabis with all the stickers over it. This is my go-to when people come over to visit. So, I mean, you as a patient in Michigan, I'm protected by law. I can make a purchase from an alien in the middle of the street dressed like Elvis, right? And as long as I've got my patient card, I can never be held responsible for any criminality regarding that purchase. So I can live in all different worlds and not worry about offending anybody. And I choose a lot of times the caregiver market.
Yeah. I think it's amazing. My vision, as you guys have heard probably too many times from me, is building an army of multimedia journalists who are documenting the end of prohibition in our country and in our world. And we've done that. Okay. We've definitely done that. Our We Talk News that follows this live broadcast or webcast or whatever the hell you call these shows these days at 6 o'clock. We talk about that. We'd like to have coast to coast coverage and feedback because no one else is doing this kind of exchange of ideas online on a regular basis. So I'm really proud of what we've gotten going here, but I am worried about the future of the industry. If this is what's going on, where the legal industry is being usurped by the legacy market because they're growing better stuff, it's cheaper. That's the laws of supply and demand and a free market, right? My economist friends.
And that's it. And same things happening in New Jersey. I know way more people that do the legacy market than go to the dispensaries. We have a couple good ones, but for the most part, they're just not up to par with your legacy market. It's kind of crazy. They've somehow mastered to make it look nice, but the smell's not right and the taste isn't there and the high isn't there. And again, it goes back to curing it properly, and they're just not curing it right, and that they're just rushing it out the door. And again, it's a money maker, and it's just the industry is, like Josh said, inside is just it's a big problem. And then you have, like in New Jersey, they test their own product and they try to tell you it's 30-something%. You can look at it and say, no, that's probably testing at like 18, 19 if you really test it right. And that's, you'll be lucky if you get 20, 21 out of it. And yeah, they're trying to tell you it's 32. And then again, with the whole high THC thing, because people don't know, and they look at the THC percentage and that's what they're buying. And in New Jersey, we have the highest prices, whether it's legacy or dispensary. It's crazy. It's like $60 an eighth in the dispensary still around here. And New Jersey figured out how to keep the licensing down, so we don't have as many dispensaries as most states do, and then most of them are all MSOs. And yeah, so the price is still astronomical and the legacy market's still astronomical, but the legacy market's obviously cheaper and better.
Are they making any inroads on getting home grow in New Jersey? I know it's been talked about by some legislators there.
I really wish they would. They haven't updated anything or said that they were moving forward with anything that I've heard, but yeah, I can't wait for the day that they say you can have homegrown. It's only right. I mean, it's legal in the state, but yet you can't grow it. It goes back to the thing how I was saying, like, yeah, they let you trade these cannabis companies on a stock exchange, but yet they're not federally legal. It's like, it's just like, it's just, let's make up whatever rules we want to abide by, and how can we make more money on the back end? It's just kind of crazy to me.
Still Class C felony in Washington to grow without a medical card. So that's one of the things on the docket this year, is to change that.
So they'll make that exception, whether it's medicinal or not, in Washington?
Yeah, they'll just make it so anybody can grow up to 6 plants or whatever that arbitrary
Right.
number it is. Yeah.
That's what they have here in Massachusetts. It's 6 plants per adult per dwelling. So you can actually grow 12 plants in your basement. And I've seen a few of these, legally. And you can also gift a lot of the excess to people around you, which I think is I love gifting, or being gifted, if you will.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, you can give away cannabis.
No.
It's
that
fine.
didn't come out right.
Wow, Jimmy, that's a great little short. Dan French will make a note of that and put that out for future use.
That will go viral for us. There you go, Jimmy. We wanted to go viral. We just made the clip.
Yeah, I don't need to be part of a viral video. I just would like to have somebody else have that honor. I just want to say we're always looking. I am talking with a new California correspondent. I'm talking to a new Washington, D.C./Maryland correspondent, and we'll continue to expand into different states as laws start to change and people's interest continues to grow. I really don't know or have any idea where we're going to be in, let's just make it 3 years, not 5, not 10. I feel like LeBron James. No, 3 years. Okay. And are we going to, something is going to happen at the federal level between now and 3 years.
Which is what we said 3 years ago.
I know, maybe you did.
We did.
I'm going to say the first year of the next, after the next election, within that first year, I think whoever's in office is not going to care anymore, and they're going to need money. They've given so much money to Ukraine. They need money.
That's it right there. Yeah, I've been saying the same thing. We're waiting another year and a half, 2 years before we see anything happen. And like I said, we're about to hit a depression. What the heck's going to happen? And we're going to need money. And they figure they know they can get the tax revenue. And the next person coming in the administration, doesn't matter what side it's going to be, they're going to be like, yo, this country needs money. And how can we draw it up? And they're going to say, legalize cannabis finally, federally, every which way. The banks can make money, we can make money, everyone can make money, and finally it can get moving. But I think it's going to take something as major as that to actually get the government to actually do something.
You know, we had an interview not that long ago here with the Washington department. Who's Normal's representative now in Washington?
Morgan Fox.
Morgan Fox said there's just no zeal in the House of Representatives for the next 2 years to do anything positive for cannabis. So we're probably likely to see a stoppage of everything there, a la what Mitch McConnell did in the Senate to all positive cannabis legislation for years and years and years there. So I think you're spot on with that too. I certainly hope as soon as we have a changeover in the House of Representatives that we have more smooth sailing for that. Sure would be nice. Our industry has needed it so badly. But I think California and New York, as the two major population centers in the United States, when New York's program becomes more full and more mature and everybody is used to that, they just have a dominant number of elected representatives in the House of Representatives based on population. I think we get some positive movement as New York matures too. That's a factor as far as I'm concerned on moving national policy.
BDS Analytics has an interesting report that says like behind California is the #1 state. If regulations were not a factor, Texas would be #2 based on population. Florida would be #3. And then New York is like #5. New Jersey is #7. So yeah,
that's our listening audience. You just named the states where we have our most viewers. I just want to say.
Makes sense.
Tells you something there. Hey guys, we're gonna wrap things up because we've got a really good. What are we doing? We're repurposing some content that we've had in the vault now for a couple of weeks, and we all love this exchange between the owner of the Maryland dispensary, Mitch Trellis and Remedy, and Rob DeFazio, the owner of the CNA stores, which, by the way, is a sponsor and providing the swag bags for our Wednesday night live from the Summit Lounge event. So if you are in the greater Worcester area, Boston area, or I'll tell you what, if you end up flying in for this event, I'll put you on the set with me. Okay, how's that? Fair enough. And by the way, the only person on this call who is going to be at Live from the Summit is Doug Miller, because he's driving up from New Jersey on Wednesday, which will be fun. And Doug and I met already in person, but Rick and Josh, you and I have met in person, but Rick, I've only seen you on Zoom. I have like no idea how tall you are or anything.
I have horse legs actually underneath this. It's like a centaur thing. So, you'll be surprised when you see me, but the ladies like it.
All right. Everybody gets to do a plug. Doug, High on Wall Street and Dougie's Picks. What's the website? People want to check it out for your analysis of cannabis stocks?
DougieFreshPicks.com. Check it out. 100% plus picks every single week.
There you go. And Rick Thompson, what are you plugging these days?
Redemption Foundation. Really, I'm doing a lot of charity work for Redemption Foundation, Michael Thompson Clemency Project. I'm on the board of directors for both. So log into redemptioncanna.com or redemptioncanna on Instagram and take a look at some of the fun things we're doing.
And Josh?
For the Talking Hedge podcast, go on anywhere. Talking Hedge. If you guys are interested in stocks or crypto, you can download Tor Alerts. It's a signal, tells you when to buy, when to sell. It's not stock advice though.
Ooh, I like that. All right, guys. Well, I appreciated the Friday free for all thing here. I enjoyed seeing all of you, and I love the contributions. We'll try and keep this going again next week as well. But right now, we are going to take a break. When we come back on the other side, it's a repeat. And then at the top of the hour, we've got this week's edition of Weed Talk News. So for everybody here at Pro Cannabis Media, our video director, Dan French. Oh, that's right. It's me, myself, and I, and all our correspondents who help us out on the new show. Thank you for watching Pro Cannabis Media. A reminder again, live from the summit this Wednesday night, 7 p.m. to 9 p.m. live on our entire social media network, including our Roku channel, our Apple channel, and the homepage of ProCannabisMedia.com. So when people ask you, how can I see it? Just go to ProCannabisMedia.com and click on the button. It'll be there, God willing, and we'll all be there on Wednesday night, March 1st. So again, it's a whole new world of weed out there. Use it responsibly. Thanks for watching, everybody. We'll see you on Wednesday. Cannabis talk show that we do here every Friday on Pro Cannabis Media. I'm Jimmy Young, the founder of Pro Cannabis Media. Always happy to be joined by Josh Kincaid from the Talking Hedge out in Washington State and Doug Miller from New Jersey. Joining us now on our Zoom room are two dispensary principals. One is Rob DeFazio from CNA Stores in Massachusetts, and the other is Mitch Trellis from Remedy in Maryland. So we've got a Massachusetts and a Maryland going, and Maryland. Now, Mitch, correct me if I'm wrong. You guys just voted that in, and were you one of the first to open your doors for adult use?
So we're not open for adult use yet.
Okay.
We actually, our adult use program officially starts July 1st. And we're still in the legislative period. There's a bunch of conversation right now being had in our legislature about the exact specifics of when and how we will be starting our adult use program. We believe it's going to start July 1st. Our legislators are adamant that we're not going to have a New York City situation on our hands. So we expect them to start sooner rather than later.
Yeah.
So we'll know more in the next 30 to 60 days.
Yeah, and I know Rob can talk about this. When Massachusetts first passed it at the ballot box, 2016, we know that there was a gray area going on of caretaking or whatever we called it back then. We could meet somebody in the parking lot and buy some.
Can't stand the gray areas. We don't like those.
I don't expect you would, and it happened in New York. You mentioned New York. I mean, we all know, if you've watched the news, what was going on there. I just find it really interesting from how each state handles it and the rollout of the legal industry. And I think Edmund used the word deliberate. Mitch, do you expect it to be deliberate?
No, I think it's going to be the opposite of deliberate. I think that the new leadership in our state, we have a new governor. He's very intelligent. He's very business minded. And I think that he sees this as what it is, which is very, very low hanging fruit. We have cards right now. We have medical marijuana cards. Yep. You can literally substitute that card for a driver's license and everything else is the exact same. So not turning this program on right now, it's all nonsense. Right? If we truly want to do the will of the people, then we would turn the program on July 1st. That's what everybody voted for. Nobody read the fine print to say it's going to be a year or two later. You know what I mean?
Right.
Yeah, but so, as you know, with anything in government, it doesn't go fast. You know, when I was in the Navy, it was hurry up and wait. You know, there's a line, you go stood in it. You don't know why, but you didn't want it to get long because you didn't want to be at the end of it. But in here,
so have you noticed that the last couple of states have either gone fast or been unsuccessful, right? So our peer is Missouri, and Missouri intends to start in February, right? So the most successful state up to this point, especially from a tax point of view, is Arizona, and Arizona started in 90 days, right? So it's like the longer you wait, the more likely you are to have a gray market or a non-regulated white market, and that's not what anybody's looking for.
No, and I think the big thing you're gonna see is it all depends on how far they are along with their medical market, right? Because that's an easy switch to flip. And that's
our
really
medical market did about $660 million in sales last year.
Yeah.
Right. So we have 100 dispensaries.
Are they talking? So Arizona, what Arizona did, and we all know this, I'm guessing if we follow this, is immediately allowed the medical dispensaries to turn into adult use as well in Arizona. And that's how they were able to get it done in 90 days.
That's the conversation here as well.
Yeah, that's what's okay. Good. Well, how many, do you know how many medical dispensaries there are in Maryland?
102.
102. Do you have a cross state? In other words, if I came down there with my Massachusetts card, does that give me admittance?
We call that reciprocity, and they do not have reciprocity in the state of Maryland.
Okay.
So because we're so close to DC, they were always worried. It's actually written into the law, but they were always worried that that would incite the feds.
Yeah. Well,
once it becomes legal for adult use, it's anybody.
No concerns at all. Exactly right.
So.
And Maryland's a unique state.
Yeah.
There's a point in Maryland where we're touched by 5 different states at one point.
Right.
What is it? You can touch 5 states in 15 minutes of driving at one point in Maryland. So, so Maryland, we have access to a lot of different places, and Maryland's going to be an epicenter of cannabis in America.
I love that. And I love that there'll be a little bit of a weed battle up and down the East Coast now. Massachusetts was first one in, right, Rob?
Yeah, they won't beat us. That's okay though.
Oh, don't take it the wrong way, Rob. We're about to kick your teeth in, my guy. Don't worry about it.
I love good competition. Josh or Doug, if you want to jump in and ask either one of these guys a question, have at it.
Yeah, I'd like to know the difference, Rob and Mitch, between the two. I'm looking at Headset's data from last year, and it looks like Massachusetts for the entire year of 2022 pulled in about almost 1.5 billion compared to Maryland's almost half, $500 million. So Maryland's pulling in $1 billion more. What's you guys' opinions about why? Is it just more stores? Is there people coming from out of state?
Mass is rec and Maryland isn't.
Yeah,
Maryland's medical and Massachusetts is rec.
Right.
So there'll be a huge, and this is what Mitch, you're gonna see in Maryland is, as it opens for rec, you're gonna have a huge supply problem, because depending on how you guys are getting all that and how they regulate that, like in Massachusetts. If you had a medical license, you had to grow one room for medical product. Whereas if you wanted to sell rec, you had another room for rec. Then they realized how
insane that is.
Insane that is. They just said, hey, you know what? As long as it's tracked and you have a license, whether it's a medical license or a recreational license, we can track where that product goes.
We actually have just like most of the country, we have an oversupply issue in Maryland, because while we have a limited number of growers, 18 to 20, they have an unlimited amount of canopy space. So the average grower in Maryland has about 150,000 square feet of grow. So right now
it's square foot or canopy?
It's square footage.
Okay.
So what the numbers that I can throw out at you are all anecdotal, but how do you store weed? You blast it, right? You make it into oil. We believe that there's kilograms and just massive amounts of oil stored in the state of Maryland. Like when rec comes, there's going to be hundreds of thousands of vape carts available in the state of Maryland. The capacity in Maryland is very, very high. So we just don't see that happening. At the same time, we've built a model where we have partnerships with the brands, and the brands have store within a stores inside of our stores. And so it's like a Nordstrom's model. So one of the things that we're able to do is, it kind of ensures supply, because those suppliers don't want their store within the stores, which basically act as extra storefronts for them to not have supply. Right. So for whatever weed is around, should theoretically go to their stores first and then to our store next.
Yeah. Question. So
can Mitch, go ahead. Yeah.
Oh, sorry. So Mitch, you don't grow in-house everything in Maryland?
No, we're not vertically integrated. Nope.
Okay. Is there any dispensaries?
Say again?
Are any of the dispensaries vertically integrated that can actually grow?
We have a bunch of MSOs in the state of Maryland and a couple of local vertically integrated dispensaries. But again, the price of the weed has dropped about 65% in just the past 12 months. What we were selling for $60 last year, we're selling for about $25 this year.
Right. And Rob, you guys in Massachusetts are going through the same thing.
Of course, same thing. We're all going through the same thing, man. They took all that money out of the stock market. They used it to build giant grows, and they're all overbuilt.
So what you're going to find is it's going to happen just like it did in Portland and Seattle, where they've got these massive grow facilities, but they don't have the distribution chain. So being vertically integrated like we are makes a huge difference. So you get into the, I've got 3 stores that I can supply for my 20,000 square feet of canopy. So
Totally.
That's a good amount of product that I can leverage. But like Mitch is saying, you partner with other dispensaries that maybe don't have or do have a grow facility, so that the biggest thing when you look at a store, it's like when you go to a liquor store, right? You don't go to just a Budweiser store or just
exactly right.
You don't go to a Bud Light store.
I say it all the time. Nobody shops at the Frito-Lay store.
So when we first opened, we thought, hey, 6 cultivators should be able to provide us our product. And within the first month, we almost ran out of selling eighths and pre-rolls, because that wasn't we couldn't get enough of it.
You need some from everybody.
Yeah, our demand in Massachusetts outweighed the supply significantly. Now, like Mitch is saying, all these big companies came in and started building these big sites. And what's happening really is there's a lot of smaller cultivators in Massachusetts that are going out of business or needing capital. And what they end up doing is they end up basically giving away 95% of their business so they can stay alive. And it's because they maybe run into mold problems and they don't have an extraction system to where they can mitigate that, or they just don't have the supply chain or the distribution chain set up yet. So they're growing it, and like Mitch is saying, they're just putting it into distillate because that's the easiest way to keep it. And
I was going to ask, what's the shelf life of distillate versus flour?
You can first of all, we don't call it distillate, we call it hot dog water. So the shelf life of hot dog water could be, who knows, depends on how nasty you are.
Yeah, but no, it's good for a while. And the problem though is anytime we make a product in Massachusetts, it's got a 1-year expiration date on it.
Exactly.
So it's not like I can take all my flour and make distillate and wait 3 years and then put it in a vape cartridge and go. As soon as I make that distillate, that clock starts from an expiration standpoint. As soon as I make a concentrate, it does that. So that's where it's got to be critical. And this is where you might see a lot of companies going out of business because of the fact that they built too big. Just like you saw in Seattle, where they had these massive 200,000 square foot facilities that they built out everything, and it's the Field of Dreams effect, right?
This is another reason. What you're alluding to is another reason that I believe we're going to go fast in the state of Maryland, because underlying is the fact that rec can save a lot of local businesses in Maryland.
Yeah.
At the end of the day, a bunch of people have spent a lot of money and got themselves in very tough positions, and rec, it absorbs all of the available supply.
You guys both can learn a lot from Washington. You're not going to have 400 tomato farmers, but I don't think you're going to be able to compare it to alcohol industry, but rather more of the tomato or coffee. So with Washington State is the world's leader in hops. So we grow this one hop and then everyone makes their own beer from it. You're not going to have that in the cannabis industry where one manufacturer grows cannabis and then we all make product from it. It's going to be more like tomato farmers who are at the grocery store. That's a collective of really small farmers that come together and provide one commodity, just like coffee on a global scale. So I think your shift will come way down. And if you look at the average basket price in Washington, we're only paying $32 on average when we go into a store. In Massachusetts, people are spending on average $72. Maryland, they're spending $97.
So that depends on the tax. So that's really, if you look at our average cart, like our average cart's about $65, but that's with tax.
And we have no tax. So ours is exactly what you said.
Yeah, we have the highest tax in the whole country, and yet we have the lowest price because of the convenience. You go and buy what you want when you want. So why is it that in Maryland you guys are spending, $97 on average, and in Massachusetts it's only $72? What is it?
Because it's medical.
It's number one, because it's medical, and number two, because there is still a.
But what does that mean though to the audience? What does that mean if you're medical? You buying more, or is it more expensive?
It's more expensive. So despite our oversupply, our base price is still higher, right? Because we don't have the number of growers. At the end of the day, there's still only 18 growers here that I can buy weed from. Versus you have, correct me if I'm wrong, what, 1,000, 800?
We only have like 500 now. It came way down.
You used to have 800 and now you have 500, correct?
It was like 1,500 at first. Yeah,
this is exactly my point.
So the reason why it is higher is because when medical patients come in, they usually buy a higher quantity for the month, as opposed to, and someone might come in, Mitch, you might be able to talk to this more, but your price also is being controlled by the 18 growers. So he's buying it wholesale. They're setting that price. And
to a certain degree, yes. Especially the higher quality products and the manufactured products, right? So at the end of the day, my guys, I don't have people in the state that sell high quality gummies for the cents on a dollar that they do in a place like Washington, right? So if I want the high quality gummies and I live in our stores are more premium stores. If I want the higher quality products, I'm still, like you said, I'm going to pay a certain price because that's the base price, right? And listen, that's how a lot of these businesses are surviving right now, right? So they sell flour at a loss or at break even, and then they make money on their manufactured products. And listen, like you said, a lot of people are going out of business right now, or a lot of people are literally selling weed for less than they grow it for cash.
They're trying to keep stores open, and you saw that in Washington, but really here, when it comes to what we're seeing, is you've got people coming in that have these massive grows. They have their first harvest. It's not the greatest of weed because it's their first harvest.
Of course.
So what happens is, they try and sell it for that premium price, and nobody wants to buy it because they can get better, higher testing THC, better quality for a cheaper price, more consistent price. And then what happens, they get stuck with this glut. So either they extract it all and go super cheap on gummies or edibles, or they just sell it at a low price. And you've got your $15, $20 eighths at that.
Yep.
So,
and then we have, in Maryland, we have one of the larger light depth warehouse greenhouses on the East Coast. So we have, a couple growers who have a really low cost to produce. And now they're into a point where, like, this is what they're built for.
Yep.
You know what I mean? When your cost is 45 or 50 cents a gram, you're built for $15, $20 eighths. That's what you're here for. You're here to squeeze the shit out of everybody else when you're making money.
Well, and that's the part, like, we built our cultivation site in phases. And so we built out 20,000 square feet. We got another 40,000 square feet that we can build out, but I've got to build up that supply chain. And everybody, when they jumped into this industry, thought, hey, I can sell this much. I'm going to make as much as I grow, I can sell. It's like
not true.
Like the field of dreams, build it, they'll come, right?
Yep.
And you got to actually apply that whole, business model to it to some degree to get that supply chain, slowly grow and build as you can, try and minimize your costs. Like, our entire facility is all about efficiency. We use water cooled LED lights to reheat the air as we dehumidify it and send it back in to bring the temperatures up. We recollect all our condensate and reuse it. So a room that normally takes 600 gallons a day, we only end up we reclaim about 90% of that, and then just add 60 gallons more to top it off. So when I got 10 grow rooms going at 6,000 gallons a day, instead of using 6,000 gallons of water every day from the city, I only use 600 because I'm recollecting all that condensate. I'm not just putting it down a drain. So everything we've done, all the way to the point where our stems and stock and waste material, we're working with the University of Massachusetts to come up with a hemp-based plastic and cardboard material so that we can actually repurpose our waste and making our own packaging. Wow. So we got to look at things, and you got to be prepared, because history tells us, you look at Colorado, you look at California, Portland, or Oregon and Washington, all the states that are open before us, that you're going to get price compression, and you've got to be ready for that.
It's a fucking weed, man.
It is, but it takes money to grow, right?
No, but at the end of the day, right, it does not take a lot of money to grow it shitty. It takes money, time, expertise, and genetics to grow it well.
Yep.
Right.
And that's the thing. That's when you look at, I always try and compare this to alcohol. People are like, you can buy vodka all day long, and when we first turned 21, we were looking at the highest alcohol content of what we bought. So we're sometimes drinking grain alcohol thinking we're great, right? Then you get older and you realize that, hey, that's not really what I like. I want a whistling pig, or I want a Grey Goose vodka. I don't want the well vodka. And that's where you've got to focus on quality from day one. And that's how everything about us is driving that quality. Because, you know, Sam Adams sells a lot of beer. And I use Sam Adams because I'm from Boston and I actually like it. But when you look at Budweiser, they got a bigger operations. But when Sam Adams came up, they were doing it here in Massachusetts and they focused on quality. And that's what you got to really get in.
Let's run all the way back to the beginning when he said Massachusetts was going to beat Maryland. You ready?
Yeah.
Here's what I believe.
I didn't say that we were going to.
Here's what I believe. You ready? He just spent a bunch of time. He just spent a bunch of time talking to me about efficiency as a grower, right? And I suspect that a whole bunch of his day is spent. And by the way, more power to you. But thank God, I thank God every day that I didn't win all 3 licenses, because I don't want to be a farmer. I'm a retailer, right? And you want to know how efficient I am? I'm so efficient that I don't have a grow.
Yeah.
I have great relationships where no matter what, I have the best selection and the best prices and the best relationships in the entire state. And I also have, you know, everybody overbuilt. So I actually have my own grow rooms inside of some of the growers so that I can bring my own genetics and I can basically do some of the things that you're able to do without the truth is without the risk. And while my downside is smaller, my upside is smaller as well. But remember, I'm a retailer. What I'm looking for is uniqueness. I'm looking for strains that a lot of people, exclusivity, things that drive sales, right? Things that drive traffic. Because at the end of the day, I want to be Total Wine. I don't want to be Seagram's. I don't want to be Budweiser. I want to be Total Wine.
Everybody can do what they want.
No question. And there's different places. There's different places for people. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Can I talk to you guys about those sales? Because it's 2023 now. So I kind of want to take a look at 2022 as well as 2023 and beyond and see why your sales are the way they are. In Massachusetts, again, looking at this headset data, in January of last year, you had sales that were 48% increased year over year, and then that significantly dropped.
We're down 25% across the board.
Maryland's even worse. Maryland on average had a negative 5% per month year over year decrease. Why is there a difference? Were people going outside of Maryland?
Price compression.
That's because you only have 18 people you can buy from. I can't see that as price compression because unless you've got way too much supply.
Because there's 5 other states coming in, and now they're not coming in, and they're going somewhere else. That could explain it too.
For 60, and this year I sell an 8 for 30. That's price compression.
Well, you're also getting more competition. So like here in Massachusetts, a good example for our Haverhill store has gone down about 5% per month for the last 3 or 4 months because another competitor opened up in our area. So there are a lot of reasons for that. You know, you look at like Maine's got a pretty strong market that's near us. Connecticut's going wreck. Rhode Island's going wreck. New York's going wreck. So it's eventually people are coming to see us over the border states. Like we're right near New Hampshire, which is great because New Hampshire won't go legal recreationally until it's federally legal, and they'll control it like they do with alcohol. You can't buy any alcohol unless you buy it from a state liquor store. And all they're going to do is just make more shelves in there, and then you can buy cannabis from them. So for us, that's going to take a while, maybe 2-3 more years. I mean, from a retail standpoint, Mitch, you know, the biggest issue as to why we went into cultivation was for 280E tax purposes. Right. It allows us to actually keep some of our money instead of give it all away to the government.
You think I was criticizing? I'm not criticizing. The truth is, I have no desire to be a farmer. When I go to these people's grows, right, I'm not excited about that. I'm excited about retail. Like we've built 10,000 square foot stores with unique experiential experiences and secret doors that go to VIP rooms. And like, I'm trying to be the best retailer on the East Coast. I have no desire to be a farmer. And that being said, right, you know, I have a lot of relationships. I have access to a lot of genetics. So I want my genetics in this market because the weakest part of our market is definitely the genetics. And I'm sure you know that a lot of the genetics that are the best in the world are controlled by people who aren't related to corporations, right? So accessing those genetics for the larger multi-state organizations, it's basically impossible. So what we have is a country full of people who are growing mids.
Hey guys, I think the two of you should have your own show. I'm just saying. I thought that was by far the best half hour I've had to do in a long time since I didn't have to do much. But Rob, tell us where the locations are of the CNA stores. Go ahead.
Haverhill, Massachusetts, 558 River Street, and then 85 Macy, or sorry, 77 Macy Street, in Amesbury, Massachusetts. We have a third store that'll be open this summer in Boston, right down by the JFK Museum. So.
Oh, cool! Right outside UMass Boston. That's awesome.
Yeah,
I love that. Hey, Mitch, Remedy. It's in Columbia, isn't it, Merrill? Where are you?
We have two remedies. We have Remedy Columbia is 8865 Stanford Boulevard. We just moved into 10,000 square foot superstore. It's amazing. And then we also have a store in Baltimore. It's actually in Security off of the 695 at Security Boulevard. So yeah, we have two stores, and then we're working on a third as well.
Fantastic. Well, Rich, again, thanks for such short notice. Tess Woods does a great job, so I really appreciate that.
It's my pleasure.
Rob, always a pleasure to talk with you anytime. And
Rob,
Scott
good luck with everything.
Thank you. Thank you, guys. And we're going to take a break and come back on the other side, and I'm going to unveil what the top 5 news stories were in cannabis according to our viewership, okay, in the next half hour. Don't go away. Coming up on We Talk News this week, multi-state operator and Florida-dominant dispensary TruLeave is the first cannabis company to advertise on Twitter. President Biden releases an executive order about the Fed's approach to reforming cannabis laws and the injustices they create. There's a legalization movement in Texas where advocates want municipalities to decide on adult use of cannabis and follow the state capital of Austin's lead from last year. New Hampshire moves another step forward towards adult use legalization as the House approves a bill that emerged from the Cannabis Committee's recommendation. Next up, the Ways and Means Committee. The latest from states, coast to coast, on We Talk News with Elena Pinto. Next.
We are Pro Cannabis Media.
Hi, everyone. Welcome to another edition of Weed Talk News. I'm Elena Pinto. We hope wherever you are, you have shoveled out from this huge winter storm that has impacted more than half of the nation. Well, now let's start in Washington, D.C. President Joe Biden released an executive order this week that was called, quote, further advancing racial equity and support for underserved communities. Once again, the president mentioned that federal reform is necessary and the administration has failed to make any changes at the federal level. He is asking that federal agencies to prepare an annual report on a public equity action plan in order to address the barriers that underserved communities may face. Biden supporters are hoping that this will appease cannabis advocates who feel like the president left out cannabis reform out of his State of the Union address. Now let's turn to our state-by-state reports. First up, the executive director of NORML in Michigan, Rick Thompson.
Hello again, everyone. This is the Michigan Report with Rick Thompson on Weed Talk News. Let's begin. Well, there are some dirty, dirty people in the cannabis industry. This week, the Cannabis Regulatory Agency suspended the operating license of cannabis processing brand Fuego after an inspection found more than 20 violations of law. Fuego's license is held by TAS Holding of Lansing. That company also operates the Noble Road cannabis processing location in Lansing. Now, follow this closely because it's a weird little story. The CRA tested vape carts made by Fuego in September of last year and discovered a banned pesticide in them. They searched the video records from the facility to learn how this could have happened and discovered that the mix Fuego sent off for testing, it's not the mix they used when they made the vape carts. So where did this untested mix come from? A very good question. In trying to learn that, the investigators discovered the processor was using an unregistered warehouse next door to their licensed processing facility. They used it to store a bunch of illegal stuff like unregistered cannabis flower, distillate, vape carts, THCA, and powder form. They were all discovered. And that isn't all. They had 3 barrels and 2 totes containing an unknown substance suspected of being distillate oil. The barrels were wrapped in plastic, which is an old trick we used to use when illegally transporting cannabis from state to state. Old school mason jars of distillate were also found, which were not registered in metric or tagged. 23 violations were issued, and the Fuego license was summarily suspended pending a hearing to revoke it completely. One cannabis consumer alert was posted not for the pesticide-infested vape carts, but for Space Rocks, the Fuego signature product. Seems the Fuego boys were spiking the moon rocks with some unregistered and unregulated THCA in order to boost that THC percentage number. The affected packages were created in November of 2022, and there are far more details on the CRA's website regarding this recall. Now, loyal viewers of this program will remember there was another investigation and summary suspension of the license for a processor in Corunna, which comes on the heels of a suspension of a facility in Burton and yet another one in Detroit. Well, Michigan cannabis sales in the regulated market dropped in January by about 6.5% from December's sales totals, according to data made available this week from the Cannabis Regulatory Agency. January sales are typically lower than December, since the holiday season is a purchasing spike for cannabis customers. So this news isn't particularly disturbing. The steady growth of the industry in Michigan continues as January 2023's sales figures were almost 36% higher than January 2022. New Cannabis Ventures points out this 36% growth rate far better than December's 32% growth and is the largest year-over-year increase in the market since February 2022. Medical marijuana sales continue to fall faster than Rihanna descending from the Super Bowl ceiling, with a 15.9% decrease in sales versus December, down 60% in a single year. Medical marijuana sold just $11 million in January compared to $196 million in the recreational market. Pricing in the cannabis industry continues to decline, and the per pound price of $12.82 is the lowest on record ever, down 11% in a single month, making the per ounce price only $80.12. But be glad, me hearties, yo-ho, for we are in Michigan and our industry is still growing. In 5 of the most mature markets in America, that isn't the case. Nevada, Oregon, Washington, Colorado, even California, experiencing year-over-year sales declines, not increases. Yeah, even though cannabis pricing is rock bottom in states like Oregon, people are still leaving the regulated marketplace and returning to their unregulated sources for cannabis. Now, you can seduce cannabis consumers with a combination of great quality and good price, but low-priced and crappy cannabis isn't going to cut it in any mature market in America. Well, the situation with potential corruption and obvious influence peddling amongst past lawmakers in the cannabis industry continued to get worse. Former Speaker of the House Rick Johnson, former Speaker of the House Lee Chatfield, former Chairman of the House Judiciary Committee Clint Custo, they've all been singled out by major news outlets for taking questionable campaign contributions from cannabis industry megacorporations. Now you can add the name of former Speaker of the House Jason Wentworth to the list of names falling under the cloud of suspicion. The one thing these people seem to have in common is the Michigan Cannabis Manufacturers Association, which was a trade group who seemingly funneled money from the cannabis industry into these slush funds masquerading as social equity funds. The MCMA is now defunct, having declined their lobbying license for 2023 and shut down their website, and they disconnected that telephone line. Investigations by the FBI and the State Attorney General's office are still ongoing, but even before their cases are concluded, we've learned that the sloppy system of pay-to-play politics in Michigan has been successful for far too long, and the current Democratic House, Senate, and governor should institute massive corrections to prevent this type of debacle from happening again. Well, last week, the Marijuana and Tobacco Investigation Section of the Michigan State Police busted up 2 residential lots for growing more than 5,400 cannabis plants without a license. That's a lot. The enforcement action happened in Ogama County, which is near West Branch and I-75. Also seized were 100 pounds of processed cannabis flower. The press release from the state police did not indicate if any arrests had been made. And as of this week, the Cannabis Regulatory Agency has combined their various rule sets into one easily searchable database. The rule sets include rules about cannabis employees, licenses and licensees, sampling, testing, disciplinary hearings, and declaratory rulings. Now, the CRA went out of their way to emphasize that this is a new index of existing rules and that no rules were harmed in the making of this new index. This effort at making things easier to understand would be welcome if the CRA actually did what we, the people, keep asking them to do to make life easier for us to understand, like remediation labeling, increase the font size on required labels, and stick up for patients and caregivers when legislation threatening them is introduced. And that's it for the Michigan Report with Rick Thompson on Weed Talk News.
Last week, Twitter announced that it would be softening their advertising restrictions on cannabis products. This week, TrueLeaf took advantage of the new policy with a tweet that championed their brand and commitment to the industry. It said, "We are here for your best life," with a drop-down line that said, "Quality cannabis, personalized support." The new rules about ads on Twitter are supposed to promote education and research about the plant in order to promote their brands, products, and services. Kim Rivers, the CEO of Trulieve, said in the first historic tweet, on behalf of Trulieve and the entire cannabis industry, thank you to Elon Musk for this historic policy change and partnership. On top of that, Goodwill, Twitter announced it will match every ad dollar spent up to $250,000 on their platform through the month of March. So now let's hop across the pond to France and Lex Pelger with this week's European Cannabis Report.
I'm Lex Pelger from What Well Creations with this week's European Cannabis Report for Weed Talk News. This week, the European Commission decided to refer Hungary to the EU Court of Justice. In a vote at the World Health Organization about their recommendations on scheduling cannabis and cannabis-related substances, Hungary voted against the EU's official position. Under the Treaty on the Functioning of the European Union, decisions like drug scheduling belong to the EU and not to the member states. Hence, Hungary voting against an official EU position and releasing a statement to strongly contradict the EU position was against the law and led to the formal launching of this infringement procedure. On CBD safety in foods, the European Food Safety Authority, EFSA, has denied that it is waiting for a decision by its U.S. counterpart, the FDA, the Food and Drug Administration. A number of applicants have submitted applications for including CBD as a novel food ingredient, but last June, EFSA announced that all of those applications are on hold pending more safety data. One of the applying companies has charged that EFSA will not proceed until the FDA first makes a move. And since just this month the FDA has declared they will make no decision until Congress tells them what to do, it could be a long wait. In any case, EFSA has now denied that they are waiting for the FDA. But for those EU companies who wish to put CBD into their food products, there is no clear timeline for when their applications will be considered, if ever. In France, their ongoing medical cannabis experiment, where 3,000 patients have been offered free products, has reported an overwhelmingly positive patient response. For patients with neuropathic pain, those reporting it to be severe or unbearable went from 80% to just 30% in 6 months. For palliative end-of-life care, they found it effective for insomnia and pain. Across the study, 91% of patients said they were in support of medical cannabis legalization in France. But in French fashion, these overwhelmingly positive results are expected to have little impact on whether the French government legalizes cannabis for medical use. Instead, the medical trial will be extended for another year, and this time, instead of the cannabis company supplying the patients for free, and probably earning a marketing advantage, for this next year of the trial, the French health ministry will reimburse them for their costs. That's the European Cannabis Report for this week. For more on the science side, see my newsletter on Substack, Cannabinoids and the People. I'm Lex Pelger from What Well Creations, reporting for Weed Talk News.
Next up, the battle for the last New England state to legalize adult use of cannabis, New Hampshire. The House of Representatives there passed a bill 234 to 127, and now it goes on to the state's Ways and Means Committee before it heads to the Senate floor for a vote. The law expands the role of the State Liquor Commission to handle cannabis as well. You will be able to possess and gift up to 4 ounces of weed, and there will be a 15% cultivator's tax. There won't be any homegrown provision, and there will be no limit on how many licenses the new Liquor and Cannabis Commission will be able to award. Many people think that eventually the alcohol industry will be entering the cannabis market, but there's one local brewery in Massachusetts that is already releasing their legal infused beer. PCM founder Jimmy Young has this week's Bay State Cannabis Report, brought to you by Holyoke Cannabis.
Hi, everyone. I'm Jimmy Young, the founder of Pro Cannabis Media, and this is the Bay State Cannabis Report, sponsored by Holyoke Cannabis. Infusion is the word that is starting to make its way into dining options for those daring enough to try it. Now, getting the cannabinoids to be water soluble was a huge breakthrough for the infused beverage community. Now that infusion has made it into a beer, and it's right here in Massachusetts. It's Harpoon Brewery. They're releasing a new kind of buzz, and they're calling it Rec Weed Beer in partnership with the Novell Beverage Company of Massachusetts. Now, like all infused beverages in the Bay State, there is only 5 milligrams of THC in this drink, and it is 25 calories and 3 grams of sugar. Certainly a different kind of buzz. A different kind of growing is Korean natural organic farming, and Cannabis Farms' Wendy Kornberg and James Burer from Organic Cultivators made a 3,000-mile trip from the Emerald Triangle in California to the Bay State to produce the Organic Cultivators Conference. Whether you grow cannabis or tomatoes, you would have learned something at the Organic Cultivators Conference in Sturbridge, Massachusetts. Now, there was a dream team of organic growers who shared their secrets and techniques for growing that create great cannabis and organic foods of all types.
While we bring these camps of agriculture together, there are still differences that if you're just a cannabis grower, you don't really understand horticulture. If you're just a horticultural grower, you don't really understand cannabis. So for the people who do both, we see where there are things in common, and we see where there are things that are different. So outdoors, I can ignore the bugs because in general, if there's a plant that really succumbs to it, I don't grow that again.
Wendy is a second-generation grower from Humboldt County in California, and she and James have survived a challenging year out there. Now, of course, if you're like me, growing anything is a challenge. That's this week's Bay State Cannabis Report, sponsored by Holyoke Cannabis. I'm Jimmy Young for Weed Talk News. Bay State Cannabis Report is supported by Holyoke Cannabis, Holyoke's finest cannabis recreational experience.
This past fall in Texas, the state capital of Austin decriminalized the possession of cannabis. There are also 5 other Texas cities that voted to decriminalize the plant. Now, a Texas legislator wants to give the right to legalize cannabis to all Texas cities. Democrat Representative Jessica Gonzalez has introduced the bill that would allow individuals to possess 2.5 ounces of weed and up to 15 grams of concentrate. But local cities can decide whether they want to opt in or out. This is just the beginning of the fight for adult use legalization in Texas. Weed in the workplace is still an issue that has yet to be normalized, and some legal states have banned discriminating against employees who test positive for weed or THC, the intoxicating cannabinoid in the plant. So now, in New Jersey, you can't. Jill Goldsberry has our Garden State Cannabis Report.
Good day, everyone. I'm Jill Goldsberry with Weed Talk News, and here's what's happening in New Jersey this week. Let's jump right into what's happening. Police in New Jersey are off the hook. And when I say off the hook, literally, as of last week, the New Jersey Attorney General's office released a new revised drug testing policy for all law enforcement agencies, essentially barring them from being tested unless it's suspected that they are using cannabis during work hours. How will they determine this? It's not currently clear, but several GOP senators who sent letters to the state's top prosecutor last year expressing concerns about the law enforcement marijuana exemption cited federal policy as a reason the state should continue to prohibit cops from consuming cannabis. Governor Phil Murphy, for his part, said that he's open-minded about potential policy changes to revise the rules for police officers who use marijuana outside working hours. Sidebar on that, if you are a cannabis user as a citizen, you will be barred from purchasing a firearm. Think about that. Moving right along, if you are looking to expunge a record, get into the industry, or just find out what you need to know about the industry, there is a clinic this weekend for you coming out of Rahway, New Jersey, and brought to you by AYR Wellness. There is a clinic that will include social services, focus on jobs, reentry, and food equity. The event will be hosted by AYR Wellness in partnership with Blaze Responsibility on February 25th from 10 a.m. to 2 p.m. at Melio Cafe at 1425 Irving Street. Registration is required. Multiple agencies will be there, and you can register and save your spot at weedtalknews.com/changing-legacies. So moving right along, let's talk taxes. If you are a cannabis business owner, you will want to know this. Back about a month ago, the New Jersey Senate committee approved a pair of bills that would allow for licensed marijuana businesses to deduct expenses, certain expenses, on their tax returns. It's a partial remedy as current business owners are barred from using banking industries and other, federal, things that they would need to use. So that is a little bit of a massage for you as a business owner. But while many state tax policies simply mirror the federal law, the legislation says that for purposes of the New Jersey's tax code, a licensed cannabis business gross income shall be determined without regard to Section 280E of the IRS federal code. With that being said, just call your accountant. Please call your accountant and find out what you need to know. I'm Jill Goldsberry for We Talk News New Jersey. Thanks for watching.
Another state that is looking at the unjust practice of discriminating against cannabis users in the workplace is Washington State. Matthew Friedlander has the story on some expected changes to that controversial policy.
Hello, everyone. This is Matthew Friedlander coming to you from the owner's office here at Skagit Organics with the Washington State Cannabis Report for Weed Talk News. So this week, we saw a lot of positive action at the Capitol in regards to cannabis legislation, which is great because we are coming up on a February 24th deadline for much of this legislation. A bill establishing a cannabis commission is still alive after passing out of committee with a substitute. The substitute will put the commission to a referendum vote of a simple majority of 30% of the active producer processor licenses. So let the farmers decide. The bill providing an excise tax exemption for medical cannabis patients looks likely to pass out of the House after being recommended as a due pass by the Finance Committee. The big news is that a bill making it illegal for employers to discriminate against employees for off-the-job cannabis use passed the Senate and will now go to the House. This bill is moving through the process quite quickly, so that's great news. If you want a more detailed look at cannabis legislation in Washington, please visit thecannabisalliance.us/news. On a lighter note, Northwest Leaf magazines hosted their first annual Leaf Bowl Awards last weekend, highlighting the best products in Washington State. It was a great night to celebrate the plant, and if you want to find out more, please visit leafmagazines.com. That's it. My name is Matthew with the Washington State Cannabis Report for Weed Talk News. Please like, share, and subscribe.
Out west in Oregon, that state's cannabis industry was shaken up by the murder of two prominent men from the industry who were in Texas. Marianne Kursagi has our Oregon Cannabis Report.
I'm Marianne from Alibi with this week's Oregon Cannabis Report for Weed Talk News. Today, the Portland metro area is crippled under record-setting snowfall. And Oregon's legislature is once again considering increasing cannabis sales taxes, which would punish an already struggling industry and create incentives for consumers to flock to the unregulated market for their product. Next week, House Bill 2505 is scheduled for both a hearing and a work session. Oregonians need to band together to stop new taxes. These taxes, if passed, would only drive more consumers to the illicit market, creating more difficulties for licensed businesses. And finally, a co-founder of Letterman, Dana Risdale, was murdered in Texas. Jimmy Martin, co-founder of Rogue Valley Cannabis in Oregon, was also found murdered in the same area. The investigation is ongoing. Letterman was originally founded in Portland, then was acquired by Unrivaled in California, and, as we reported a few weeks ago, was recently spun off from Unrivaled. It's unknown if the murders are connected to the cannabis industry or not. That'll do it for the Oregon Report this week. I'm Marianne with Alibi for Weed Talk News.
One of the most conservative states in the Midwest is now looking at changing their laws on cannabis. A Democrat from Iowa has introduced a bill that would set up a regulated adult use market. You might remember that Vermont was the first state to legalize the adult use market through its legislator. We know Jessie Lynn Dolan knew that because she's been right in the middle of it. And here's her Vermont Cannabis Report for this week, sponsored by Canatrol.
I'm Jessie Lynn Dolan from Vermont Cannabis Nurses, and this is the Weed Talk News Vermont Report. The fallout from Curaleaf's involvement with the Russian oligarch Roman Abramovich has now reached Vermont. The Vermont Cannabis Control Board is investigating Curaleaf's financial investment with medical dispensaries in the state. Curaleaf CEO Boris Jordan has been linked with Abramovich on some past deals. Now, PhytoCare in Bennington and Vermont Patients Alliance in Montpelier are two of the dispensaries who are in the control board's targets. Since U.S. relations with Russia continue to deteriorate, Abramovich's financial affairs are getting looked at very closely. There have been some complaints in the town of Hyde Park, focused on the cannabis company Green River Cannabis. The Cannabis Control Board has cited them with record-keeping, packaging, and fungicide violations and $2,500 in fines. The Cannabis Control Board will convene at 1 p.m. on Monday, February 27 for their public virtual monthly meeting. In this meeting, they will vote to close the application window for outdoor and mixed-use cultivator licenses or not. On February 28th, the Cannabis Control Board staff will hold an after-hours question and answer session at 6 p.m. to field questions from the public on the license renewal process. During the first month of 2023, cannabis retailers in Vermont sold over $5.7 million worth of products, according to the State Agency of Administration, with figures from the Vermont Department of Taxes. This week, Senate Judiciary Committee began a walkthrough of Bill S-72, which includes removing the THC caps and increasing allowable milligrams per packages of edibles. As several cannabis bills materialize in the state, stay tuned to vermontgrowers.org for updates. Entry registrations are now open for the 4th annual Hetty Vermont's Growers Signature Cup, the Hetty's Cup. For more information, go to hettyvermont.com. That's the Vermont Report for Weed Talk News. I'm Vermont's cannabis nurse, Jessie Lynn Dolan.
The Vermont Cannabis Report is supported by another Green Mountain business, Canatrol, winner of High Times Best Dry Cure System. Check them out at canatrols.com.
Even though there's doom and gloom in many cannabis markets around the country, publicly traded cannabis stocks continue to be a volatile choice for investors. Obviously, they need to listen to High on Wall Street with day trader Doug Miller in New Jersey.
Hello, everyone. I'm Doug Miller from High on Wall Street with this week's cannabis stock report for Weed Talk News. TPCO Holdings, stock ticker GRAMF. They operate as two companies, the parent company and Gold Flora. Well, they're merging into one company now in an all-stock deal. The combined company is going to be called New Parent. They're going to operate as Gold Flora Corp. Well, let's talk about the stock chart because that's what I'm interested in. It's been trading around 29 cents and it just started to curl up. So it looks like this merger is a good thing for the time being. So keep your eye on it. And that's this week's cannabis stock report. Reporting for Weed Talk News, I'm Doug Miller.
The Missouri adult use market is up and running and booming now. Brandon Jones has his finger on what's going on in that state's new market. Here's his update from the Show Me State.
Hey everybody, it's Brandon Jones for Big Reach Distribution with Missouri Cannabis Report for Weed Talk News. And that's right, we're just 2.5 weeks or so into rec passing here in Missouri and sales starting. The first weekend, we did see 13 million in sales. I've talked to most of the dispensaries, been to quite a few of them around, and they're doing between 3 times to 5 times the amount of sales they are doing prior to rec passing. Whenever I go to a dispensary now to do a little pop-up, say hi, drop off some boost packs or do whatever, there's a line. There's people in every single waiting room. Before, I rarely saw people waiting in line in the dispensaries. There'd be, 5-10 people there. But now I'm seeing lines inside the lobbies of 15 to 20 people while they already have 10 people being helped. So the market is not slowing down. I asked, how is staffing going? So seeing a lot more increased jobs here in the state of Missouri as well from the dispensaries, needing to acquire more staff to take care of all this. We've seen longer hours. Even one location is open all night, Saturday night here in Grandview, Missouri, Relief Resources. You can go in at 4 a.m. on a Saturday after you get off your bar shift at the restaurant. So it's pretty crazy how sales have we thought would peak and then kind of slow down. But right now they're staying steady and plateaued at a 3.5 to 5x for most dispensaries here in the state. Another big thing that's happening here in March 4th, next Friday or next Saturday, will actually be people marching on the Capitol in Kansas. So as you know, Kansas and Missouri are bordering states. The city of Kansas City, actually, state line is right in the middle. And we're going to march on the Capitol to try to get legalization passed in Kansas. Everybody from Missouri is going to be wearing green to represent. We have green medical access. We are patients. And everyone in Kansas is going to be wearing orange because they could be going to prison for the exact same plant. So we're going to have a big group of people coming together to try to get legalization of cannabis passed in Kansas, Saturday the 4th in Topeka. So anybody that can join, please do. Green if you're from Missouri, orange if you're from Kansas. If you're from neither one, pick a color, come support, have fun. And yeah, we're excited for what's happening here in Missouri. Events getting ready to happen in April with Wiz Khalifa coming here to town. It's going to be crazy with Burner and everybody else. So a lot of things happening in Missouri. We're really excited. Hope you can get a chance to come out and you can purchase cannabis, whether you're from Missouri or not, as long as you're 21. And again, I'm Brandon Jones from Bee Green Distribution with the Cannabis Report for Weed Talk News. Everybody stay educated and medicated.
And finally tonight, another celebrity is throwing their support behind the pro-cannabis movement. Rapper Wiz Khalifa was featured in this month's GQ magazine, and he shared his own cannabis story. Khalifa claims that smoking weed has helped his breath control. Last year, there was a study out of New Zealand that compared the impact on lungs from cigarette smoke versus cannabis smoke. The findings of that study showed that smoke in any form entering your lungs is not good for you. There were opposite effects. Cigarette smoking sees air in the lungs decline, while cannabis smoking actually has the opposite effect. It increases the air in your lungs. And as for Wiz Khalifa, he says everyone loves it and I'm with it. His brand is sold in 7 states now. One more note before we leave. We want to wish basketball star Brittany Griner good luck as she returns to the American basketball court with the WNBA's Phoenix Mercury. But that will do it for Weed Talk News this week. I'm Elena Pinto, and remember, it's a whole new world of weed out there. Use it responsibly.
It's a whole new world of weed out there, isn't it? Everyone is learning new ways to titrate, ingest, consume, imbibe, and engage with this plant medicine we call cannabis. Hi, I'm Jimmy Young, the founder of Pro Cannabis Media and the host of In the Weeds, and once in a while, the really live business cannabis talk show we call Green Rush on Friday afternoons from 4 p.m. to 6 p.m. Eastern. Now, let me tell you my cannabis story. You know, I've had 4 major surgeries in the past 23 years and suffer from osteoarthritis with a variety of metal parts in my body and one on deck. Now, thanks to those chronic pain issues, I've been a medical patient in Massachusetts for almost 10 years now. I remember my first trip to a dispensary just outside of Boston, and I told the bud tender I didn't want to smoke it anymore, so I tried edibles, then tinctures, then vaping, and now, if I'm going to smoke, I only use the Weegits filtration system. What? The Weegits.com, Weegits, that's weed, W-E-E-D, G-E-T-S.com, is where you'll find the planet's coolest product that cools the smoke from everyone's favorite flower. Now, the guy that started this was a pretty good medical device manufacturer, and he created this maze pipe that cools the smoking process from 1300 degrees Fahrenheit upon inflammation down to just 90 degrees when it reaches your mouth. That's right, 1300 down to 90. That's why this maze pipe is amazing. So here's how it works. You start with that glass bowl, you flame on, and then you inhale nice and smooth so the smoke goes through 3 different filtration and cooling systems. Now, if pre-rolls is your thing, you can use the Weegits filter that a pre-roll fits into perfectly. That's right, or even a chillum. The more filters, the smoother the draw. Best of all is the price. You can get all this, or one or the other, for just a few bucks. It'll cool your smoke and you'll give your lungs a break. Now, Add in the code of PCM TV and you get 15% off. So just go to Weejits.com and check out the best way to enjoy a cooler smoke with less coughing and hacking and more peace of mind. All that resin and tar is collected in the polyurethane filters that are easy to clean with soap, water, and a few Q-tips. Your lungs will thank you, and so will I.
Which at first I thought, oh, I don't know if I'm an activist, but I have, held a bullhorn on the State House steps. I have frequently testified before the Cannabis Control Commission and the state legislature, and I'm not, shy about criticizing where I see, mistakes being made. So yeah, I think that's what differentiates me, just an appreciation for the plant. And then also I'm a cannabis entrepreneur myself. I've started businesses, so I've lived that entrepreneurial journey. I know how hard it is. It is absolutely a marathon, not a sprint. So I think that, I'm in the game, not just on the sidelines.
As a broker, we have access to many, many cannabis carriers. So I will go in with 2 or 3 quotes for people. The quotes might be $20,000 for one, $22,000 for another, $17,500 for another. Pretty close among the 3. What I tell people is it's not the pricing, it's what's included and not included, meaning exclusions. An exclusion in layman's terms is just something that's not included. It's not on the menu. So it's just not included. But if you don't know that, if no one shows you that on page 71 of a 150-page policy, you're not going to know. No one knows. I never met one person that says they read an insurance policy. If you do, I got some property in Florida for you.
Weed Talk and In the Weeds are 2 productions of Pro Cannabis Media supported by Revolutionary Clinics, one of the top medical cannabis dispensaries in the Massachusetts area, now with 3 locations in Greater Boston, 2 in Cambridge and 1 on Broadway in Somerville. Rev Clinics has a patient-first mission. They will customize your needs as a medical patient with the proper titration and combination of strains, flavors, and products. Rev Clinics, where the patient comes first.
So the reality of the matter is, big banks and small banks are going to be different in a lot of ways. And they're both going to have their advantages and disadvantages. For a business like cannabis, you really have to have an integral knowledge of that business and a real granular knowledge of that business and the players involved in it. And that's why if you look at the banks that are successful to play in this space in Massachusetts, they are smaller banks that are very heavy, intensified personal touch, human communication, where you don't get a lot of that with the bigger banks.
Coming up on We Talk News this week, multi-state operator and Florida-dominant dispensary TruLeaf is the first cannabis company to advertise